I think the entire angle there was intimidating. You don't send 10 police officers to issue a fine. And being the person that I am, that sent me the opposite way. It's a very different world that we live in now. People have a lot more to lose. I decided, oh, maybe I can sell some steroids to pay for my own usage. And that was how it started. So I bumped into a guy that I'd not seen for a couple of years. And he's like, well, have you ever considered selling anything else? And that very quickly escalated from small supply steroids to buying wholesale amounts of Class A, Class B drugs, to selling that locally, to then sending that around the world, importing, exporting. I've just gone from selling a handful of steroids, making £100 here and there, to dealing in hundreds of £1,000s worth of wholesale steroids. At the time, I had a 15-bedroom apartment in Liverpool city centre, which is a whole other story. So, you know, the club would finish at 4 o'clock and the lights would go on. I'd be like, everyone back to mine. So we'd all go back to the apartment and there'd just be unlimited drugs all over the place. And, you know, you're the man, you're the man, you're the man. I went to prison and I was sentenced to 6 years. What the fuck have you done, Nick? When I left prison, they do this huge piece on me. Jersey police had some evidence on me that they'd been sitting on for many years. And it was about a week after this article come out. They come and got me. I just looked through the paperwork and I was like, this couldn't be any more orchestrated if it tried. And I hired the best lawyer on the island. It cost me an absolute fortune. And he said, in 30 odd years of doing this job at the top level, he said, I've never seen anything like this. His exact words were, you've pissed somebody off high up. He's like, and that's all I can say.
Nick, how are we?
Not too bad, thank you, my man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's been a long time coming, I think, hasn't it? It's been back and forth, but I thought we'd wait until we're in the lovely, quaint setting of our new podcast studio. So, given that you're in the lovely, quaint setting of our new podcast studio, weather, you were complaining about the cold and the wind as you came through the door. How different is it to the northwest currently?
I am a proud northerner, and if you were southern, I'd give you the whole spiel of how good I am in cold weather, but Scotland does it different.
It's funny because being a northerner and then being more north than the north creates this bit of a grey area where nobody really knows what opinion to have. It's kind of just a mutual respect of we're all cold, it's windy, nobody likes it here.
Yeah,
let's just move on.
I'm still in shorts like a good northerner.
You're next to the heater though.
But I'm
just in case anyone's wondering, he's not that hard. So I first became aware of everything that you were doing when a lot of other people did as well. I think in the Wirral, you were very well known for developments up until that point, but I really connected with your logical argument around why a gym should remain open during a very specific period of our lives. And a lot's happened since then, but a lot happened before that, which ultimately informed why you were so passionate about these things and what had built the confidence to be able to act like that. So why then did you feel in your community it was so important to keep gyms open?
A multitude of reasons, really, but first and foremost was, and I'd like to say first and foremost was the physical and mental health side of things, but that's not quite true. It was originally simply just the data that governments had put forward. They presented a piece of legislation that stated which industries were set to close, and we weren't amongst them. And then when Boris made his announcement to the country, he stated that we were amongst the industries that are due to close. And having read that legislation back to front, there was no mention of our sector whatsoever. And that was the catalyst for me going in deeper on why we should have stayed open in the first place. And first and foremost, these guys have put together this piece of legislation and we are not part of it. So that kind of created the ground for me to go a little bit deeper. And, you know, we always had the mental and physical health side of the argument that we could have used, but that would, and as we've seen later, further down the pandemic, that wasn't the priority of government by any means. So whilst that was a huge part of the argument that we had, and we were completely well within our rights in terms of scientific literature that we should have stayed open, it was in the country's best interest, it was in the interest of national health for us to stay open, but we didn't really need that angle, and to think that the politicians were even going to take that seriously would have been a little bit naive at that point. I think the driving factor there was the infection data that you have based on our industry doesn't justify closing us, full stop. And that was the first angle that we went at. And then when we gained the ear of the politicians and the public because of this error, should we say, that then enabled us to come at it from the angle that actually really did matter, which was the physical and mental health angle. But, you know, as I say, in the first instance, if we'd have just gone at it from there, we'd have just looked like another industry saying, oh, you know, we should be open because we feel this way or that way. And, you know, as has become very apparent through the pandemic, the priority was not national health. So, you know, we were very fortunate that in the tier system, we had this piece of legislation that was incorrect, and that enabled us to begin the conversation. And then that opened, you know, 101 different doors to us being able to use the data and the scientific literature that government were putting out themselves, but nobody had really taken the time to read. And, you know, had you stripped away the emotion and the opinions and taken a completely objective look at it, we should never have closed as an industry, and we were paramount to survive in that pandemic and to national health as a whole, which, you know, in recent years, or at least recent year, in fact, that has all come out in the press. And, you know, we've had support for the argument that we had at the time from the World Health Organization, from the NHS, from ONS, from the WHO. So it's, you know, it's vindicating now. It's very difficult at the time to get the arguments across. Whereas, you know, for people like yourself and I, it just seemed the obvious answer was, well, if we're trying to better national health, if we're trying to keep people's immune systems up, then the last thing we should be doing is locking them inside, isolating them, telling them they shouldn't be going outside getting daylight exposure, and they should be, well, we give you 50% off McDonald's at the same time. So, you know, it seemed very counterintuitive to me, and it was difficult to understand how they'd even reached the conclusion of, right, well, we need to close these industries down, and that's what's going to be best to protect everybody. And it's this was the tiered system that was in the October. So we took a very different approach to the initial lockdown, which was March of 2020.
Yep.
At that point, I had no qualms with what government decided to do, in that we had no idea what was coming. It was completely new. It could have been anything. And the right thing to do, at least in my opinion, was at the time to say, right, let's take a step back. Let's lock down for a few weeks till we know what this thing is. And it's just unfortunate that that theme had carried on through without the data to support it. And that was the whole premise of our argument, was that, hang on, this applied at the beginning and you made the right decision to do so. However, we're further down now. We have more data. We know what we should be doing, what we shouldn't be doing, and this isn't the right action at this time. But obviously that was wrapped up in a lot of politics, and that's how I think we ended up making a lot of the wrong decisions at the time, for the simple fact that it was public opinion that mattered rather than public health. And that's always a danger to play with.
The reason that I start there in the chronology of your very busy life thus far is because I think the confidence that you had to take that stand with the information that you just presented really shone through and actually brought others with you on that journey. But a lot of people didn't have that confidence. I think that's why it's important to sort of rewind a little bit as to where that was built over the years for you to be able to be the one to. I've still got that noise in my head of that little crackle on the police radio, just reel share after reel share after reel share, where it was just that first little crackle of the police radio and you started talking to camera. It was all I saw for a couple of days. And when I was thinking about this podcast ahead of time, it just kept coming into my head, that little crackle. It was a bit of a twitch, which I'm sure will still keep you awake. But you grew up in the world. You grew up local to where you were fighting to keep your gym open. But the years that came before that, a lot has happened. And that is a series of lessons which I can imagine underpin the confidence that you had to take a stand on this out of pride, out of passion, and actually out of a better understanding of the system at play and where you sat within it. So do you want to just talk us through exactly that, the context that led before essentially Body Tech, and where a lot of people, myself included, first heard about what you're up to?
Yeah, I mean, my history, as you say, is on the Wirral. And I grew up 20 yards away from that original gym. In fact, literally the street beside it. And I very proud to be Northern, to be from Merseyside. And we have historically faced a lot of neglect from central government. And that was, that was a very influential factor in what happened there. But my entire childhood growing up, my teenage years, all leading into this moment, there's been a lot of, I don't want to say a theme of anti-establishment in my life, but more always this innate desire to ask why, to question things where most people would not. And that's come from a very complicated childhood, a very complicated relationship with the educational system. And that's, it all kind of led to that one point of the issues that I'd had with authority growing up, and I'd been in and out of trouble with school, been in and out of trouble with the police my entire life. So there's always been this kind of rift between the powers that be and myself. And it's never been so much as I say, it's never been anti-establishment as such. It's never been, I hate the police, I hate the system. It's just seeing a lot of unfairness and inequality in our area, in my life. I'm wondering why people haven't questioned it more than they have. And I have, throughout my life, or throughout my younger life at least, I was failed a lot by the system. So I have a lot of first-hand experience in knowing that the system isn't perfect. And, there's an argument to be made that it would be impossible to create a perfect system, and I understand that. But there are a lot of problems in this world, a lot of problems with this country that would be an easy fix. That it's always been confusing to me as to why nobody's taken the action to make things right. And the COVID situation was kind of my first opportunity to take a stand against that. And it was likely a situation and an opportunity that I'd never have in my life again. We were, Liverpool was put into the tiered system before anywhere else in the country. We were the first to be put to tier 3, which was the maximum stage at that time. That was the maximum regional lockdown that they were doing. And that was something that was very bizarre because our infection rates didn't really represent what was going on there. And at the time they'd said, we're launching this tier 3 system. Liverpool's going to be the first to go. We're also reducing the rate of furlough. So I think the rest of the country, and I forget the exact numbers, so the rest of the country was on, say, 80% or wherever it was, up until we'd gone back out of lockdown. They said, well, we're putting Liverpool back into lockdown, and they're going to be on 63% furlough. Now, having been in the national lockdown previously, and everybody was receiving 80%, and that was fair across the board, I think that Liverpool was going to be the first to be put back in with no closing date. No, there was no sign of it being undone. It seemed that we were being guinea pig to see if this would work, and see if people would just take the lesser amounts. Look, we're going to close everything down, but we're also not going to keep you, above water. And we had our own. We had both of our city mayors come forward, discuss on the television, and like, look, our city's not going to survive. We're not going to survive. And historically, there's been a lot of neglect from central government for Liverpool, and that's the environment that I was brought up in from a Labour household, having gone through the struggles of the earlier decades. And it's always been, there's a certainly since the 70s and the 80s, there's been this tone in Liverpool of it's us versus central governments. And there have been a lot of leaks over the years of tactical collapse from central government for Liverpool. So this kind of seemed like it was the recurring theme following on. And this was an opportunity for me to stand up and say, look, well, this is what my family have been telling me about my entire life. This is the kind of north versus south divide. The wealth is in the south. Doesn't really matter what happens to the north. I thought this is my opportunity to stand up and fight for what I've heard for the last 30 years from my family is that we are neglected, with central government's resources, with their finances. We are neglected as a city. We're not thought much of whatsoever. And that was my opportunity to say, no, this just isn't right. It simply isn't right. And it didn't sit well with me at all. And I come from a family background where my nan and granddad were very proud Liverpudlians. They're from Anfield. And all the stories they tell me of old was people sticking together, which is something that's always kind of resonated with me because I haven't seen it too much growing up. It seems to be a sentiment that's been lost for whatever reason. But they've always driven into me, look, you stick together, you stick together, you stick together, and that's how we win. That's how we do well. And this was the first opportunity I had to say, look, something is wrong here, and we can fight this if we fight it together. Unfortunately, it was in a climate where people had an appetite for that. People wanted to step up, but nobody was really taking that initial step. And I'm a risk taker by nature. I obviously have that underlying question for authority. So everything kind of fed together, and I made the decision to keep my business open, but on completely, respectable grounds for authority. I didn't want to create a battle between myself and local police or the local politicians, because it certainly wasn't them that was making the decisions. And it was the entire angle that I took on that, especially with the clip that you're referring to. The first day the police came, and they were very heavy-handed. There'd have been, I don't know, 10 police officers maybe from the armed division of Liverpool Police, and they come to issue a civil fine. So they've sent armed response to come and issue a fine for a civil matter. And I said to the police officers before I started recording, I said, look, gents, because they really didn't want to give me the fine. And over it was like, Nick, please don't make us fine. You just close the doors, just ask everyone to go home. There's no reason for it to escalate. And I'd had a conversation with the local gym owners the day before as to whether we were going to do this or not, and whether we were going to stand together. And the whole thing based on everybody saying, look, we're in. And I said the same. I said the same in the group. I said, look, I'm in if you're in. And everyone else said the same. Well, we're in if you're in. There was no kind of indication as to who was going to be the first to kind of take that step. So it all rested on, everyone being true to their word. So I had the police turn up at the premises the day after we announced what we were going to do. And they said, look, Nick, we've got to give you a £1,000 fine if you don't close now, but we want to give you every opportunity to close. I said, well, how often can you fine me? And he said, well, it doubles. Every 4 hours, we can give you another one. So 1,000, 2,000, 4,000, 8,000. And then it caps at 10,000, but we can give you that 10,000 fine every 4 hours. So that would have been certain collapse. Business would have been gone in a matter of days. But I'd given my word, and I made the phone call. I said to the police officer, I said, look, just give me 2 minutes. And I found one of the other gym owners, the closest one to me. I said, look, this is real. This is happening now. I said, are we in or are we out? And I said, because if we're in, I'm going to do this right now, and it begins. I said, but I need to know that you're behind me and we're doing this no matter what. And Thea is the lady's name I spoke to. Chris and Thea who own Empowered in Upton. You're probably aware of it. She said, we're in. We're all in. And they are diehard Northerners as well. It's, they are some of the few that I have close to me who I could bet my life on it are very much, if they give you their word, it's worth its weight in gold. So I put the phone down, I said to the police officer, I said, look, gents, I appreciate you've got a job to do. I appreciate it isn't you that's instructed you to come down here today. I said, so I'm going to take the fine. I said, but before I do, I'm going to take a video of you all. I said, so out of respect, you want to make sure you're stood apart so you don't get in any issues at work. Like, they were really cool guys. I took this video of the police officers and then panned up to the people's gym sign at the back. And that will have been the first video you've seen that went viral very quickly. And the police officers were great. Don't get me wrong. Once we were off camera, they said, Nick, look, we know this is nonsense. We know we shouldn't be doing this. We know this is a waste of our time and resources. We know that you guys shouldn't be closed. We know that the legislation that's been put out isn't coherent with what's been said on television. He's like, but we've been asked by our boss's boss's boss to come down here today and give you this fine, 10 man strong. And that
how did you feel committing to that, knowing that you had the backing of people around you, and for the first, maybe not the first time in your life, but in that setting, when sort of, not to sound dramatic, but the fight came to you, when for the previous 30 years, you'd only really heard about it through family members and things. And I know growing up, single mother, had you quite early, lots of time in, as you mentioned, where the system had let you down, very independent, very young with the parkour, which I'm sure we'll break down a little bit shortly. Did you feel pride and a sense of community in that moment there that went beyond the actual premise of why you were doing things? Was it personally for you something that filled a bit of a gap?
Definitely. And I think I'd been waiting for that for a long time. And as I say, that's never going to happen in my life again. It's never happened before. And that was, if I hadn't taken that opportunity there and then, I think I'd have kicked myself for the rest of my life. And, what developed from that, the bond that I developed with the people around me and the support that I had was it was absolutely phenomenal. And I've never experienced anything like that in my entire life. And I think if it wasn't for, I think the entire angle there was intimidate. That was the plan. You don't send 10 police officers to issue a fine with any other intention than intimidate. And being the person that I am, that sent me the opposite way. Because I seen through that as soon as they come through the door. There's 10 officers here for a civil matter. I said, this is an intimidation tactic. And that is the reason why, if they'd have come, just 2 officers, and they'd have been, as polite as they were, and just said, look, Nick, it's not a big deal, just close. Go through the avenues that you go into, look to get it overturned, everything will be okay. I'd have probably said, you know what, gents, let everyone finish up, and then, we'll address this tomorrow. but they come in heavy-handed. And they come in heavy-handed whilst also being vocal about the fact that they didn't want to be there. And that to me was the flame. I thought, okay, they know, they are clearly intimidated enough that they know we're going to have an impact if we do this. And that's why they've sent so many. And they assume that I'm going to back down because there's 10 police officers in the room and I'm going to say, oh no, I must automatically be in the wrong. But all that did is fuel me to think, we're onto something here. And then when I called Thea, a quick message in the WhatsApp chat, and she's like, look, we're all in. We're actually doing this. And then, from there, that video went viral, 5, 6, 7 million views in 24 hours. And that's the support we got from that was insane. And it wasn't just support from people, it wasn't just an echo chamber of similar people. We were being bombarded with messages from nurses, doctors, teachers, politicians. Everybody was seemingly behind us in what we were doing. I think because of the approach that we were taking was completely scientific. It was, here's the data. There's nothing emotional here. It's not, we don't want to do lockdown because we don't like it, or we don't get to do the things that we like. It is the same data that governments are putting out does not support the decisions that they're making. Therefore, how can they, how can they be making such rash decisions when their own data doesn't support the decisions they're making? How can they say that they are, it seemed very confusing that we had politicians making decisions that impacted the entire country who don't have a single degree of scientific literacy whatsoever. And that was quite concerning, because then that makes you question everything else. And I think that was one of the biggest, one of the largest secondary impacts of the pandemic is people have started to question everything now. Yeah. If you can lie to us
and
so blatantly.
That's lasted as well, hasn't it? That skepticism is carried with us now, where you see things on the internet, you think, people are just wanting to pull the thread on anything and everything now.
They are, yeah. And that's obviously created quite a dangerous situation, because there are of course things we should question. And then politicians do questionable things every single day, but then on the flip side, there are genuine policies and genuine ideas that are now being pulled apart because governments have lied and misconstrued so much through COVID that they just have no trust anymore. And it's kind of self-inflicted, but it obviously impacts the rest of us, that the general public now want to question absolutely everything because they've got this history of neglect and abuse and, straight out misinformation from government. And that's terrifying. But, that's the first time, that whole incident, that was the first time that I've seen what I've heard the tales of old from my family of unity. And this is what happens when people stick together. And back in our days when we all stood together on the picket lines, this is how we got things done. And I've never seen that in my life whatsoever. Obviously, it's a very different world that we live in now. People have a lot more to lose than before. But to have got a sense of that 70s, 80s unity, community, everything like that is one of the most empowering things that I've ever been part of in my entire life. And it made me really proud to be a human being. Not just proud to be Northern, because we got support across the board throughout the entire country. And that gave me a little bit of faith back in humanity, that people haven't entirely given up on sticking together, and the power that we do have when we stick together. Because I think for the most part, regardless of their intentions, government very much tried to divide through COVID, because it's easier to get people to conform when they're divided. And to see so many people stand together against what the core narrative was, and don't get me wrong, the government made a lot of good decisions through COVID as well. It wasn't all bad by any stretch of the imagination, and it was obviously an unprecedented situation where it's going to be difficult for anyone to make the right decisions, and I'm not naive to that, and I've said that all along. But the power of community that we had, and the difference that we had, and the impact that we made in such a short space of time. And when we achieved 650,000 signatures on that online petition, and that was in the space of a matter of weeks.
Yep.
And that they're numbers that you don't see at all. And that's testament to, the people of the country as a whole, but our industry took a turn, I think, for the positive during that time. And it very much, for an industry that's so heavily focused on the individual and progression, and for the most part being better than others, certainly in the bodybuilding realm of the fitness industry. I know not as an entire package, but it's very competitive, and it is very individually driven. And to see that turn from people focusing on themselves to everybody acting in unison for the better of everyone, like that was one of the most inspiring things I've ever witnessed in my entire life. And it was absolutely beautiful to see how much the industry come together in terms of everybody from your your first year gym user, straight through to your business owners, to your influencers, to your top level corporate giants who all got involved, and everybody was singing from the same sheet all together with one goal. And that's outside of a massive political revolution. Where is the last time you've seen that in this country? Like you just don't see it. And that come from the fitness industry. It wasn't the hospitality industry that stepped up. It was no other industry that stepped up the way that we did. And I think that's something that we should be really proud of as a whole, as an industry, that we're the ones that did that. And we couldn't have done it without each other. I couldn't have done it on my own. The corporates couldn't have done it without the little people. Like everybody from the bottom to the top was of paramount importance of winning that legislation being overturned, and we did it. And we're the only industry in the entire country that did it. And I think that's something that's really special. I think that's something that we've forgotten about too quickly, because that's our opportunity to see quite how powerful we are. And as soon as we slip back into the focusing on our own lanes, we kind of forget what it is that we can achieve if we all work together. And we are a very, very, very powerful industry.
I think it's flipped the other way a little bit now, where it's become almost more individualistic, competitive, and almost a bit more
lost.
Yeah, I was going to use the word vapid, but lost is a little bit more kind. And I think it's something that we like to stay in our lane and sort of have our mission and our message, which is much more be your own hero, focus on what develops you as an individual, not for any reason externally driven. And that's been very rewarding for us personally, but we don't really jump into the argument on that side of the industry that seems to have swung the other way with the pendulum. But I think it's important to reflect. I've heard you say you grew up with very little in the world, and I've always heard you refer to yourself as a happy child, which is, it comes from a periods of adversity throughout that. And parkour for you was a real turning point in your life, where you found a community for the first time that probably gave you a real sense of purpose. And between the age of 19 and then over a decade later, when you found that sense of community again for the first time, I would imagine, I mean, I might be making assumptions there, because the gap in the middle was probably a little bit more externally driven than internally community driven. But reflecting back on the way that you felt personally as an individual and what you actually wanted to achieve with yourself with that feeling of being a good person, how did the mission, when you got the "we're all in" from Thea, compare to the team environment that you found with parkour that brought you out of that troubled teenager time of your life? Because I can see a lot of similarities on premise, but the scale is just so far apart.
Yeah, and it's again, as I say, I think I was waiting for that opportunity, because I'd lost a lot of that in my life from coming away from parkour through injury and through the alternate paths that I took. And I lost that when I come away from the parkour community, which would have been late 2010, early 2011. I come from a community of people where it's unlike anything I've really seen anywhere else in life. And that is, the from 13, 14, when I went into that space, the entire parkour community, it was rife with a certain type of person. They were all very neurodivergent. Everybody's very hippie-esque, for lack of a better way to describe it. And the entire focus of that collective was the collective. It was, I want to see you get better, because then we get better as a whole. It was very different to the fitness industry in that I want to be number one. Whereas the parkour community was, we all want to get better and we all want to help each other. And it was very, very team focused. And there was sort of a very weird ethos there. I say weird, a very unique ethos there, in the sense that everybody kind of shared everything. Like if you had a resource, it was shared amongst the group. If one of us was fortunate enough to have a small amount of money for whatever reason, it was shared. If we went to another city in the country, or we went anywhere around the world, it was kind of assumed within our community, because we had an online forum, you always had a bed. You'd stay on someone's sofa, somebody's mom would cook for you. And we were only young kids at the time. And that's just that complete open door policy. And everybody was very open emotionally. And there was no ego there at all, because it was very, I'd say it was bordering on spiritual. And everybody just wanted to get better in themselves. And there was a lot of deep conversation, a lot of team building, and it was a very unique environment compared to the average teenage lad up our neck of the woods. It would be very, drinking in the park, talking about women, girls, whatever else, and it was not, we didn't have that at all. It was very, very different, and that took me from a space of being a young child from maybe. I think I started kind of getting in trouble when I was around 7 or 8 years old on the council estate that we were living on at the time. I didn't really fit in school. I was getting in a lot of trouble. Mum wasn't really around. She was only 15 years older than me. I had quite a harsh experience when I was 9 going through 10. I was a victim of sexual abuse for about 12 months, maybe 18 months. I don't remember too clearly how long that went on for. And that just made me spiral even worse. And then about towards the end of that happening, and I think this might have been the reason that it did end, and I've compartmentalized a lot of this, so the details are somewhat blurry, but when we moved out of that area when I was 10 and a half, like that stopped. And then I went into high school, and then for the first year of high school, I was in a lot of trouble, fighting all the time, always drama. I didn't feel like I fitted in the conventional academic system whatsoever. And then they isolated me in a porta cabin at the side of the school, the unit, they called it. And it had caged windows, big spiky fence around it. And it was just me and one other in there. And that was kind of the alternative schooling that they put me in because I didn't fit in. And then shortly after they put me in there is when I found parkour. And I just happened to bump into somebody one day in my local area, and they were climbing around, messing about. And I got involved, and it very quickly escalated from just climbing off rooftops and finding a reason to get chased by the police, just to cause havoc, just to run away. And we become aware of, or at least the elder in our group become aware of a video on the internet of these guys based in just the south of Paris, a chap named David Bell. So he was the creator of modern day parkour. And there was this one video on the internet, and I don't even know if YouTube was around at the time. It might have been Vimeo or something similar. This
Like
one,
yeah,
or it was downloaded on LimeWire or something like that. Yeah, there's just this one video, and it was to Eminem's "Lose Yourself." So it'd have been around 2001,
every
2002.
music video around that.
Yeah, of course.
Was, wasn't it?
And this was an entirely different thing. To watch it, it was an art form, and I had taken it from us being a group of kids climbing on rooftops, just trying to get in trouble, to hang on, this is something really beautiful here. And the elder in our group, Danny, he'd have been 4 or 5 years older than me. Very, very talented athlete still to this day. And he kind of took the lead on that, and we were training for a year or so, and it took my focus. Like, I just stopped going to school entirely. And then about a year into this, I decided to travel to France on my own. So I'd have been about 14 at the time. And I bunked the train down to London, stayed in the toilet cubicle the whole time on the Virgin train from Lime Street to London, and managed to get on the Eurostar. I think I met a friend of mine who was Danny's older brother, I think Chris. I think he helped me get onto the Eurostar. And I got the Eurostar to Charles de Gaulle, to France. And I'd spoken to an American guy that I met on the internet. He was about 10 years older than me, and he was going to the same place, Nice, the town is called, and this is the birthplace of parkour. And he was going there to go to the original places. There's a big rock climbing wall there that's been sectioned off for 20 years because 2 people fell off it and died. So it's just a feature. The Dame de Lac, it's called, the Lady of the Lake. And it's just this huge monument surrounded by a lake. So I managed to get to Paris. I navigated their underground system. As I say, I'm only 14 at this point. It was extremely intimidating. I'm meant to be in school, of course. Gets to this suburb of Paris, walking the streets, and finally found this Formula One hotel. It was like £10 a night. And this is where I met the American guy. Really, really nice fella. So we started, exploring the local spots that we'd seen on these videos, and just by chance we bump into the original team, David's team. So we meet, the originators, and they were very different. As I say, we're only a year into this, and we're still very much cause havoc, run away from the police. That's the whole motto. We meet these guys, and they invite us to train with them, and their English was okay. It was broken, but it was pretty good. And we start doing conditioning in the park, which I've never done before. So they have us do lunges, press ups, stretches, all this type of stuff. And I was just like completely mind blown. And then to watch how these guys moved, they were world class. So obviously I've come away from this entire experience, and this is it was beautiful. We used to call them night missions, but we've gone through Paris with these guys on the rooftops of Paris, just ninjaing past people's windows whilst they're in bed. And, it was a really, really incredible experience. And I've come back from this trip to Paris with an entirely different outlook on the sport. And it's gone from just being mischievous and seeing if we can get chased by a police car or a helicopter or whatever else to we need to condition, we need to work on our strength, we need to work on our mountain resilience, our physical resilience. Like this is art. And I brought that mentality back with me when I got back to the UK, and that changed my life completely. And we started to get very, very talented. And we were the first team in the UK to be doing parkour and free running. So we got a lot of commercial work quite quickly when we first started putting our first videos up. We'd still only been young, 16, maybe 17. We started getting big jobs thrown at us, Red Bull, Adidas, you name it. We were getting all the big boys because there was no one else doing it in the UK at the time, and it was just becoming a thing. So we were the only option. I'd like to say it was because we were the best, which we were at the time, but we were the best of the one team that was in the UK. So we used to get, we got all the work, and then for the 4 or 5 years that followed, we had an incredible life, and we traveled the world, and we met some of the most fascinating people you'll ever meet. And we literally went everywhere from America across to India. Like we did absolutely everything. We worked in some really, really fascinating environments, and we got to meet people from all different cultures. This is why most of the lads, most of the boys and girls my age are still in school, and we're traveling the world, seeing everything, experiencing anything you could possibly imagine. So that was very, it helped me on my road to maturity significantly, because I'm just from a little peninsula in Merseyside where not a whole lot happens, and I've been thrown into the world, head first. And it was to have those opportunities and to have the community around me that I had, and anywhere we'd go in the world, we'd announce it on this online forum that we get. And by the time we arrive, there's 100 people there waiting for us, all just wanting to train together, eat together, talk, share stories, share ideas, share styles. And that was the happiest I've ever been in my entire life to this day. And we didn't really have a whole lot. Don't get me wrong, we get the odd job where we get paid well, but that would see us through for the next month until we got it. And most of it would be spent on stupid stuff, like we'd buy crash mats and trampolines, and we'd buy trips to other areas. And we made some good money, but it never really went far. But it didn't matter. We didn't have, for the most part, we had nothing. And we all used to wear the same green Primark jogging bottoms that were £2. And that was us. And we'd wear a certain type of shoe called Kalenji, and they used to sell them in Decathlon. They were £12 a pair, but we'd go in our old pair, swap them for a new pair, leave the old pair on the shelf, and walk out. So we were living off nothing. We were, for the most part, we were shoplifting for our lunches and stuff like that. But nobody cared. Like everybody was super happy. And as I say, and even to this day, and I'm very fortunate in my finances these days, but still, I would give it all up now to go back to that in a heartbeat, because nobody cared. It's
simple.
Yeah, it didn't matter what you had. It didn't matter nobody was interested in the slightest. All that mattered was, have you got grip on the bottom of your shoes, and you're going to come and train for the day? And we're just going to hang out, and we're just going to talk philosophy. We're just going to climb some routes. We're just going to have a good time. And that was enough.
There was something I heard you talk about elsewhere as well, where there was one person specifically, a couple of years older than you, that was very religious, wasn't he? Danny, that was him. Okay. And he gave you one very specific bit of advice one day that you struggle to comprehend, but has really underpinned my understanding of who you are as a person now. Obviously, there's a lot that's happened since then. There's been lots of transition periods and things, but as has been demonstrated thus far in the conversation we've had and throughout all of the media that went out online during the pandemic, very balanced, very logical, very kind and non-confrontational. And I think that all came from one conversation with Danny, didn't it?
It did, yeah. And Danny's one of the most inspiring men I've ever met in my entire life. And he's, as you say, he's a religious chap, and I'm the polar opposite. However, you couldn't argue with the man's morals at all. I mean, and say what you will for a religion, but for the most part, they are kind, good people. With very good, very strong moral compass. And we had I'd lost myself a little bit. So this would have been just before we started to get all the positive opportunities, and I was in a bit of a rut. And for no better way to explain it, I was a bit of a bully at the time, and I was lashing out at people. And Danny just come into my life. This was around the transitional period, and I was talking to him on MSN. It might have even been Windows Messenger. It might have been that old. So we had a conversation. He's like, and I was telling him how I feel. I don't know how we even arrived at that conversation. He's like, look, come and meet me. was like, okay. So we meet up. We're in Morton, in my hometown. We climb to the highest point on one of the buildings there. So we're really high up, sat on the ledge of this building, just looking down, watching people go about their business. And it must have been about 10 o'clock at night. He's like, Nick, I want you to try something. And it's going to sound ridiculous and you're going to want to give me a funny look and you're not going to want to do it. He's like, but I need you to trust me and I need you to try it. And I'm sat there thinking, what religious spiel is he going to give me now? I can't, not today, Danny, please. No, I don't want, not again. I'm not in a good space for this right now. And he just looks at me and he can see what I'm thinking. He's like, hear me out. Trust me. He was wise beyond his years. He was only maybe 3-4 years older than me, but he had the wisdom of a 70-year-old man. And he says, I want you to go out from tomorrow. I want you to go out your way to be kind to everybody, even those who aren't kind to you. Be decent, be happy, be positive. He's like, it doesn't matter what frame of mind you're in or how they approach you. I just want you to be kind and positive and see what happens. And I just kind of laughed it off at first, just chuckled at him. I was like, all right, Danny.
Nice try.
Yeah. Cute. And he just looks at me dead in the eye and he's just like, please, for me, just as a favor, he's like, you've got nothing to lose. Just try this and see how it goes. I thought, you know what have I got to lose? I didn't hold that much hope at all. I was like, whatever, I'll do it for Danny because he inspires me. He's one of the best athletes in the world. Let's try it. And from the next day, I applied that mentality and my life changed to something that didn't even remotely resemble what it was before. Maybe coincidence, maybe not. But from changing my outlook and my approach to other people, the year that followed, I went from this depressed, angry kid to being happy, content. And I had some of the biggest opportunities that I've ever had in my entire life thrown at me just because people wanted to be around the person that I was being. And that stuck with me most of my entire life. And there is a period in which I lost that, and that probably lasted for about 2 years. But for most of my life, I've applied that logic, and it's worked wonders for me. And I'm sure there's a degree of coincidence in there, but you certainly can't argue the fact that people want to be around happy, positive people who are supportive. It's as simple as that. And it's not entirely selfless in that I spend a lot of my time trying to help other people because it makes me feel good. I don't just do it because it helps other people feel good. And I think a lot of people that take that angle, trying to look like the martyr, I think it's quite misleading. I do it because I like helping people, but I also do it because that makes me feel really good about myself. And that's kind of the theme that's carried through my life since the day that Danny had that conversation with me. And it's been probably the most powerful lesson I've had my entire life. And it cost me nothing. It cost me absolutely nothing to just change the way that I approach people, change the way that I am with people. And that's made me content. And I would say it's one of the driving factors behind my success is just taking that approach to life. And I'll be forever in debt to Danny for that conversation. And he's moved out to Scandinavia now, so we don't get to see him much at all. But I will be forever in debt to that man for that lesson.
It was a knee injury that changed the environment a little bit, wasn't it? Because you mentioned there was a 2-year period where you lost sight of that, you lost yourself a little bit, and that came from a change of circumstances through injury, which is something that it's happened to me. It's why I got into self-driven health and fitness rather than playing rugby. Obviously, I sort of chose a path that I had control over, and it turned into a positive for me. I know Jamie, who's sitting there behind the desk currently, has had injuries that have really compromised the direction he's wanted to go in. I've got friends who spent 10 years trying to break through into this level of professional rugby. They've had injury here, injury there, lost the foot in the door there, and it can put you in a completely different set of circumstances where your worldview changes. And for you, having had a lot of independent development, I think it's probably fair to say, and quite a lot of it quite fast-tracked, you were put into a exposed position when you were about 19, weren't you?
Yeah.
Where I think you followed a path that you would have if you could have chosen to, you wouldn't have chosen to at the time. And that was where you probably lost sight of that conversation with Danny a little bit, wasn't it?
Massively, yeah. And I lost my personality entirely through that time. And that's again, this is something that I think reaffirms my entire belief that having that type of lifestyle that I had previously is what's fundamental to me being happy and the way that I am right now is because of the stark contrast between what happened next when I come away from that. And that was I'd have been about 19 at the time, as you say, and I suffered quite extensive injuries to my knee, and I had to take some time out. And I took a step back from the parkour world, and I managed my team briefly as I stepped away. And the doctor had said to me, "Look, you either take a year out now and you recover, and you go through the proper channels of rehab, and you'll be okay, or you can continue for another 6 months, and then you're going to need surgery, and then you're going to be out for 2 or 3 years." So it seemed like a no-brainer. I'm going to have to step back, because obviously it was a lot of heavy impact at the time from a young age. So I took a step back, and my thought process was, well, I'll join the local gym, leisure centre, so as keep me fit whilst I can't do any heavy impact stuff. And as with everything in my life, there's no mild situations. Everything I do ends up extreme, whether extreme positive or extreme negative. There's no middle ground with my life at all. Extreme is the recurring theme. So I've joined the gym, joined this local gym, local leisure centre, and this would have been late 2010, I think. So I've joined the local gym, trying to keep fit. I'd been there maybe 8 weeks, put on a lot of size. My genetics favour muscular developments significantly so. Like my entire generation above me and my family are thick set, big legs, and they've never been to the gym in their life. So I'm 8 weeks into joining this fitness, this leisure centre now, and I put on a lot of size. And it's only a council gym, so it's only a small gym. The dumbbells max out at like 26 kilo or whatever. And this guy approaches me and he's like, "How old are you?" I'd been like 19 at the time, maybe 20. He's like, "You should really compete, I was like, "What do you mean compete?" He's like, "In bodybuilding." And I was bewildered at the time. I was like, "What, like Arnold Schwarzenegger?" Like, I knew nothing about any of it at the time. This is obviously way before the Instagram boom of 2014. He's like, no, you really should." And before you know it, I'd been in the gym 12 weeks maybe, then I'm on my first cycle of steroids. And then my entire focus switches from the parkour side of things, because I wasn't involved anymore. I was just managing the team. And I don't want to say it made me bitter, but it made me kind of resent the fact that I couldn't get involved. And that made me quite unhappy. And that pushed me in the direction of pursuing this bodybuilding thing. Oh, this is new. This is something that I can do right now. This is something that I can put all my energy into. So I'm 12 weeks into this now. I'm on my first cycle of steroids. By the end of the first year, I think I'd probably put on 4 or 5 stone. Like, I ballooned. And then I competed shortly after in the National Open, and I won Junior Mr. Britain in 2012. And then that very quickly escalated, because this predated bodybuilding being popular. It's obviously, it's saturated now, but at the time, I was one of the only well-known juniors in the entire country, and I'm getting magazine features. I had a sponsorship with Optimum Nutrition. Like, this is similar to getting in early on the parkour scene. It was similar to what I'd done, and with the bodybuilding scene, we were in early. I was getting a lot of attention. I was obviously pumping myself through with a lot of synthetic hormones, and I was only 20 at the time, so I had all my own hormones thrown into the mix, and then I've shut them down with 10, 15, 20 times worse with the synthetic testosterone. So my entire brain chemistry is shifting at this point. And I've come from the parkour community, where everything is about love and respect and community, into you want to beat this guy on stage. You want to be bigger, you want to be stronger, you want to be better, you want the next sponsorship, you want X, Y, and Z. And I started to lose my personality so quickly, and I become very ego-driven, very power-driven. And it was at that point where I decided, oh, maybe I can sell some steroids to pay for my own, my own usage. And that was how it started. I started selling a few steroids, and because I was quite well known, I had a lot of people asking me for it then, because this was very, very early days, as I say. So then I started selling steroids wholesale, and then I tapped into my old parkour community to see who had who around the world. Do you know anyone that would on X, Y, and Z? So then I started exporting steroids. I was doing really well off it at the time, to the point where I'd briefly taken a job with Vauxhall Motors, working on the assembly line there, building cars in Ellesmere Port. And I was making that much money from selling the steroids that I eventually just walked away from the job that I had there. And I took a redundancy from Vauxhall, and they gave me about 25,000 to leave, plus the money that I'd made from the steroids. And I come away from that, and I had this big stack of money. I had maybe 20 grand that I'd had from the steroids that I'd been selling, 20 odd grand that I had from Vauxhalls. And then for whatever reason, I still don't know why I did this, the night I got my redundancy from Vauxhalls, I jumped on Lloyd's TSB online, Applied for a personal loan for 20 grand because I thought, I'm not going to work again. So let's just try it out now. Approved. So now I've got 65 grand. I went to the bank the next day, took the money out. I've got this big lump of cash now. And just by pure coincidence, I bumped into a guy that I'd not seen for a couple of years, and we get talking about who's doing what or whatever. And I said, yeah, you know, I'm selling steroids now. I'm sending it here, there, and there. And he's like, well, have you ever considered selling anything else? I said, what are you talking about? So we get into a conversation about methadone, and he's like, oh, I've got the contact. I've been selling this for about a year now. There's loads of money to be made. He's like, how much money do you have? And I was like, well, I've got about 65 grand. And that very quickly escalated from small supply steroids to buying wholesale amounts of Class A, Class B drugs, to selling that locally, to then sending that around the world, importing, exporting. I got arrested not too long into that. I got arrested on a firearms charge in 2012. Police raided my house, stripped my car to pieces looking for this firearm. They obviously know I was selling drugs as well at the time. I was still sponsored by Optimum Nutrition. So in my spare bedroom in my house, it was full of protein because I didn't take it. They're sending me like, it was a lot of money at the time. They're sending me like $4 grand worth of protein a month. And this is back then. So I had this spare bedroom, probably not much smaller than this studio. And it was packed with 2 kilo tubs of protein because I just didn't use protein at all. Still to this day, don't really use protein powder. So they've come in and assumed that was how I was siding the drugs. So you're talking maybe as much as 100 2 kilo tubs. They've opened every single one.
You would, wouldn't you?
I mean, yeah, the tubs of powder and all the pieces fitted. So they ripped every single container open, poured it everywhere, poured solvent in it all, took my oven apart, took my car apart. They only found a small quantity of Class B drugs, a couple of kilos, some cash. So they bailed me. My solicitor's advice at the time was, look, you need to get a job to make it look like you're trying to live a normal life. Now, the only job I knew I had quick access to through a friend was working security in Liverpool. So I then ended up as a doorman working in the middle of Liverpool city centre, which has then taken me from this gym guy who was selling steroids, who just happened to have a mate who had a connection for drugs, to being mixed in with some really heavy duty characters. So then my network has expanded tenfold. They catch wind that I've got contacts all over the world that we can export to on all different, on all manner of islands, shall we say. So that escalated again, that job. And this is all in the space of 6 months. I've just gone from selling a handful of steroids, making £100 here and there just to cover my own lot, to dealing in hundreds of £1,000s worth of wholesale steroids, drugs, sorry. So that's escalated really, really quickly. I, at this point, had completely lost my personality. You wouldn't recognize physically or psychologically the person that I was then to the person I was not 12 months previous. I looked completely different. I acted completely different. I'd started to lose all the people around me that I'd gained over the years through parkour and free running. All the really good people I had around me, they slowly started to step away from me. And at the time, because I was taking that many anabolic substances like Trembolone especially, I was abusing, which is really damaging for your brain chemistry. Like you are, I mean, it obviously varies person to person, but for the most part, you are paranoid, overconfident, angry all the time. It's
whilst on the doors.
So I'm thriving. I'm just waiting for drama all the time. Like I want to fight, and it's very, very bizarre. And I don't understand the mechanism of it exactly, but it prohibits you. It prohibits your ability to produce serotonin and dopamine at a normal rate. So you find it significantly more difficult to be happy, to feel content. So you're just angry all the time. You're frustrated all the time. So, it's changed me completely, and people started dropping away. And in my eyes, that's a them issue. There's nothing wrong with me. I'm exactly the same person I always was. I completely deluded as to what was going on because I had so much, external validation coming in from the new people in my life. Because I'm finishing on the doors at 4 o'clock or whatever. And at the time, I had a 15-bedroom apartment in Liverpool city centre, which is a whole other story. So, the club would finish at 4 o'clock and the lights would go on. I'd be like, everyone back to mine. So we'd all go back to the apartment, and there'd just be unlimited drugs all over the place. And, I had so many people latch on to me at that time, which is quite easy to get lost in because, you're the man, Nick. You're the man. You're the man. You're the man. You were all these yes men and yes women around you who were just there for the free champagne and the free drugs and the lifestyle. But you don't see it at the time. And I got so lost in that And it wasn't until I eventually got arrested on a charge relating to Jersey and the Channel Islands that I went to prison, and I was sentenced to 6 years. And you know, I remember it like it was yesterday. It's the same story I give to everybody, because it really was the, you know, the wake up factor was when you go into your cell in Jersey prison, you get given like a foam canvas board to pin your photos to, and it's maybe 1.5 meters wide by 1 meter tall. And when I first get in, I'm receiving letters from all of my my new crowd. Oh, Nick, oh, so sorry what's happening. Because obviously in them circles, and I cringe to look back on it now, but in them circles, knowing the guy that's just gone to jail, the big guy, that's the cool thing. And they, you know, there's obviously a lot of hype around the first 4 weeks that I went away, being like, oh, my mate Nick's gone away, he's X, Y, and Z, and whatever else. So for the first 4 to 6 weeks, say, I'm getting letters from everybody, all my new crowd. They're sending me in pictures, letters. So I've now got this canvas on the wall that I've covered in all these photos that kind of just stem the last 12 months. It's all the champagne parties and the fancy cars and the new circles and pictures in clubs and fancy restaurants. And then about 3-4 months in, everybody starts to drop off. You know, the letters get less and less. And it got to the point where probably by about the 6th month, I then started to have the odd letter drift in from my old parkour friends, one here, one there. And I wrote back, obviously, and it was around that time that I started to come around from the steroid abuse. So they made me go cold turkey in jail, you know, as they would. I was abusing benzodiazepines at the time as well, so they had to wean me off benzodiazepines, so I was taking Valium quite extensively at the time to combat the fact that you can't sleep taking Trenbolone. The amount of drugs that I was taking to counter the side effects of the other drugs that I was taking, it was a mess. Yeah. So when I got to prison, I had to go cold turkey on the synthetic hormone abuse. They tapered me down on the benzodiazepine abuse, and then by the time I kind of come out the other side, and that withdrawal process was horrific. Crying my eyes out every single day, like you just not knowing what to do. So obviously my testosterone levels had flatlined. My estrogen levels were through the roof. You know, so that was quite traumatic, but I'd say it's going to jail at that time is probably the best thing that's ever happened to me, you know, during the last kind of 10 years, because the path I was on, I'd have ended up dead or I had a jail sentence 10 times the length that I did get. So I've got this wall now, and I get the odd letter coming through, and I come back and forth with my parkour friends, and every letter I reply to, I'm like, it'd be nice to hear from X, Y, and Z. So I get more, and then they start sending me photos in. And then gradually, and it's not something that even registered with me at the time, I'll take a couple of photos down of the last 12 months of my life, and I'll replace them with my couple that I've been sent in from my free running friends. And for whatever reason, call it a days, maybe it was the antidepressants they had me on at the time, I didn't kind of recognize what was happening until it had happened entirely. And that wall, if you'd have taken the first frame that I'd put up in the first kind of 2 months that I was there, and you put that side by side with the picture board that I had 6 months in, there was not one picture. And all of those photos of the new lifestyle I'd had, they'd all slowly been taken down piece by piece and replaced with pictures of my old free running network, you know, my old really special friends. And because it was quite progressive, you know, and it was steady, I didn't notice that transition until I was lying on my bed one day and I'm looking up and I'm reflecting. I'm like, wow, there's not a single photo on there from when I first come in. And there's probably nobody left from that period who still contacts me, and everybody that I have back in my life again is from the life that I had previous. And that was the, you know, that was the realization for me. That was the wake up moment of, what the fuck have you done, Nick? Like, what's happened the last year and a half? Like, who have you even become? Like, how have you, sure, I was injured and I had reason to be a little bit kind of, you know, a little bit disappointed that I couldn't engage in that anymore. But to go from that extreme to the new extreme that I'd gone to, I was like, I can't ever allow that to happen again. No matter what it costs me, no matter what I've got to do to stay the person that I'd been for the 20 years prior to falling into this trap, I was like, I have to maintain that at all costs. And that was 6 months into my sentence. So I had 2.5 years left after that. And then them first 6 months were entirely necessary. Like I needed that time in jail to go through that process, to go through the agony that the withdrawals were. I needed to suffer to the extent that I did to remember who I was. And that's, you know, it's similar to the impact that the conversation that Danny and I had, that had a similar kind of impact on me of this is the wake up moment now. This is, if you end up in this position again and you lose yourself like this again, you may never come out of it. So, the next 2.5 years that followed while I was still inside was just kind of sat on the bench waiting to get out. Because I'd done the mental arithmetic at that point. I was like, right, I'm me again now. I'm ready to go. And then obviously the realization hits of, well, you've actually got about 1,000 days left. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, the 2.5 years that kind of followed that point was like, right, when I get out, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to reconnect with that previous life that I had, and I am not going to let them go no matter what it costs me. Like, you would have to pry that ethos and that community and the people I have now, you would have to pry them out of my dead fingers. You really would. Like, there is nothing in this world that's worth me losing what I gain from having that community around me. And I'm fortunate in that a lot of the original friends I had forgave me for the person that I become. And some took more time than others. And some of my closest, in fact, probably one of my top 3 best friends today took longer out of any of them. And it took him probably a year after me getting out to be like, that is you, isn't it? You are in there. Yeah, it is actually you. This isn't just like a short thing. You're back. You're really you. And I respect him for making me work that much to get back there. Like, from the contrast that, as I say, I'd have gone from being this pure person to this everything that I detested my entire life. Because, like I said, our entire parkour community was just community. There was no air for materialism or anything like that. We were the complete opposite. So to go to what we'd always kind of seen as the other side, that was terrifying. Not just to myself coming out the other side, but to the people around me, to see me go from what I was to what I then become was, and as I say, I was happy to pay that penance. I was happy to just take that year to, this is me, and I'm going to show you it's me rather than just tell you it's me. So, and I've been in a really good space since then, and it's I wouldn't let that go for anything. I really wouldn't ever again.
Do you credit the prison system for that recovery, or do you credit the community that you found through working hard in your teenage years to get there? Definitely
the community. The prison system is shattered. It is absolutely.
So do you think,
shattered.
had you gone in, I mean, this is, I guess, more of a commentary on the system as a whole. Do you think, had you gone in with no taste of that community, with the upbringing that you'd had, you ever could have come back around to live a normal, fulfilled life?
No chance. So and that's, there's plenty of data to support that wouldn't have been the case, because you've only got to look at our reoffending stats. So in this country, I think our reconviction rate is about 60%. And that's just those that get caught. So 60% of those that walk out of those prison doors are going back to jail.
60?
Yeah.
Wow.
And that's just those that get caught.
Do you have any comparisons in other countries that do it differently?
I think the only,
Finland are very open with theirs,
so yeah. So Scandinavia as a whole do it really well. They focus on rehabilitation rather than punishment. Whereas in the West, I know we have, in terms of Western Europe, we have the highest prison rate per capita, whereas America are all worse than us. But in terms of Western Europe, we are the worst. And that's because you go into prison and think, for example, you're a 40-year-old man. You have a wife, you have kids. For whatever reason, you're taking a different direction, struggling on bills, whatever. You decide to sell a small amount of Class A drugs to your friends amongst your community, which, regardless of your opinion on that, we're talking low scale, but we're talking Class A drugs. You get arrested for that. You get 6 years in prison. Well, now you lose your job. The press have covered everything. So now your kids are getting harassed in school. Your wife can't handle the stress that she's getting from the kids getting harassed in school. You end up with a divorce. House gets sold. Kids don't want anything to do with you. You then spend your 3 years in prison. You come out to probation. You have no sense of rehabilitation whatsoever. You come out, you can't get a job anywhere because you have to declare the fact you've been to jail for drugs. So nobody will give you a job. So you've lost your marriage, your kids, your job, your life as a whole. You can't get another job. What are you left with? Where do you go? You go straight back to what you know. And that is unfortunately the situation we're in, where
it's a desperation cycle, isn't it?
It is, yeah. What? Until you can provide an alternative, people are just going to go back to what they know best. And if you know that you can make ends meet by doing X, that's what you're going to do. Until someone provides you with Y, and that's where our prison system falls apart, because there is no sense of education, there is no sense of purpose. You spend 23 and a half hours a day in a box with a stranger on a bunk bed watching daytime television. That is it. There is nothing else there whatsoever. And that's sad, because you meet some really, and don't get me wrong, I would say the majority of people that I met aren't people that I would really associate with after the fact. However, there are 20, 30% of people that you meet in there who are just good people who've made a bad decision.
I think that's where the counter argument always is. And people have different opinions on the upbringing, the privilege, the background, the support that these people have had to have such opinions. But the example you've just given, the counter argument, well, they made their choice, you reap what you sow. But if that's come from a place of desperation that the person saying you reap what you sow can't comprehend through a better background or a different background, it's very difficult to really pinpoint what the solution or the alternative is, other than some sort of upheaval on preventing people from finding themselves in desperate positions in the first place. Because if you're saying there's 20, 30% of people in there that you think were good people that made bad decisions, everybody's made a bad decision in their life, but it's scale. And the scale of that will increase relative to the scale of the desperation in which their current circumstances dictate. So I'm not expecting you to have the answer, but in terms of from what you've seen with your experience and having the mind that you do to look at things through an analytical lens, what would be the changes that you would make to try and have an impact on this?
We need to follow the Scandinavian model. So the Justice Sec has said this many times, although it certainly isn't practiced, is that the punishment, when you're sentenced for a crime, the punishment is prison. Whilst you're in prison, you're not meant to be punished further. Your punishment is having your civil liberties removed. You're having your freedom removed. That is the punishment. Whilst you're in jail, the focus is meant to be rehabilitation, reform, prepare you for the world that comes next. So you can come out a better person and you can have opportunities. But in this country, we don't get that. You have the punishment for prison, then you punish whilst you're in prison, then you punish when you get out of prison. And that's the issue that we have. And it's difficult. I mean, and in fairness to government, even if they do the right thing in terms of reform and they give you opportunities and they ensure that there's work available when you come out of prison and there's accommodation, you still have the battle with the press. And once your name is in the press, you can be Googled forever. And it doesn't matter if the government have the best intentions, they can't force an employer to hire you who's not going to, because they will just Google your name. And you can't really blame that on the corporation itself, because if I have two candidates looking for a job, or if any employer has two candidates looking for a job and they have identical CVs and one's been to jail and one hasn't, where's the incentive to go for the person that's been incarcerated?
You're an employer now.
Yes.
Have you had this come across your desk and had to make that decision?
I have, and I have 4 ex-offenders on my payroll for the simple fact that they have evidence to me that they've applied for over 100 jobs and they've been declined from every single one because they've been transparent about their offence, albeit 10 years previous, and they can't get a job anywhere else.
Is it a crime to withhold that? Or is it just...
You are obligated to declare.
Okay.
It's changing somewhat, but if you get, say for example, if you get a sentence over 4 years, I think it is, your conviction remains unspent for life. So you have that for life. So it's only because of my understanding of that situation where I've seen lads who desperately want to do better and they have applied to absolutely everything they possibly can and been declined, where I'm like, okay, well, I need to give this person an opportunity. Otherwise, they're never going to have one and they're just going to end up back where they are. Had I not had that personal experience in prison and seen how bad the system is, as an employer, I'd look at that and go, well, I'm taking the safe bet. Why wouldn't I?
Do you still have to fight with any sort of bias? If you had 2 CVs in front of you, would there be a part of you that you'd have to wrestle with just through societal conditioning, or has your experience removed that bias?
I'm the polar opposite in that, and they used me as the poster boy in prison at one point for employments after prison. So I did a speech for Mark and James Timpson of Timpson's.
Yeah. One of the best employers in the UK, aren't they?
Yep, they are indeed. For Timpson's, for Virgin, and for McDonald's. I done a presentation for them whilst I was in prison because, as I said, they used me as the poster boy for reform, which is quite ironic because I think the system is absolutely broken to pieces. But that then created opportunities for people to get work. So I was all for it. So I did a talk for them and I said, look, there are certainly bad apples. There's no argument there. There's some people that are going to be lifetime criminals, and that's just how it is. I said, but you also have to see that most of these lads in here, because this was we'd progressed through the system at that point. I was in an open prison. which is a little bit more relaxed. You start in a higher category. So the highest security is a category A and the lowest is a category D. And you work your way through the system. You get to a category D and it's an open jail. So there's no locks, no fences. It's all very relaxed. It's on a trust basis. If you mess up, you'll get thrown straight back into the higher security. But this is where you have and this only represents maybe 0.5% of the prison population. And there's about 100,000 people in prison at the minute in the UK. Maybe a little bit more. Maybe 4,000 of that population is in an open prison, which is where you actually have an opportunity to do a little bit better. And that's kind of the Scandinavian model is very much open prisons, and that's why they do so well. And I said to these directors, I said, look, there's the lads here in this room who are looking for opportunities. I said, and this is based on employment from prison. So you get to leave the prison in the morning, go to work, save some money up. The prison take 40% of your wages and they put that to like a victim fund. And you keep 60% in your bank for when you get out. So you have a nest egg of sort, and then there's an employment opportunity when you leave. So with Timpson's, for example, if you go to a Timpson's key maker or a shoemaker or Max Spielman, chances are the person that's serving you, there's a 50-50% chance that they are on day release from prison. And if you work well in that environment and you save up a little bit of money, that when you're released, Timpson will honour that and they'll give you that job after you're released, which is brilliant.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So that and they're the kind of big opportunities that are out there, but they're few and far between. And I said, look, if you're going to hire somebody from within prison and give them an opportunity, I said, look, they're not taking sick days, because if you take a sick day in prison when you're meant to be going to work, you get penalised. You get what's called an IEP. You get a couple of them and they're taking the television off you. You're taking your visits off you. You're taking all of your privileges you get taken away. I said, so you can't take a sick day. I said, people are desperate for money because the average wage in prison is £8 per week. So you're on buttons and you've got to decide what you do with that £8. Do you spend it on tobacco or vapes if you're a smoker? Do you spend that on phone credits? Do you spend that on food? Because the nutrition in prison is dire, absolutely dire. So you have no daylight. So you get no vitamin D whatsoever. The nutrition is absolutely poor. You get no exercise whatsoever, no opportunities, and you're just watching cooking programs and reality TV and soaps all day long. So your mind is mush. I say, so look, the opportunity to go out and work, I feel like you have purpose again. I said, you're going to find some of the most loyal workers you're ever going to find, because these are people that are desperate for opportunities. And if you find the right people, and don't get me wrong, 1 in every 20 may bend you. They may be an idiot. But if you're going to gain 17, 18, 19 hardworking, ambitious, grateful employees, then surely it's worth it. And surely the employee retention is significantly higher when you're giving someone an opportunity that they desperately need versus somebody who's just jumping from job A to job B to job C.
It's just a different incentive structure, isn't it? It's you can look at bonuses in one firm for people that don't have the same struggles, but an incentive structure for somebody that has nothing in that situation. Just having the job is the incentive structure required.
Is huge, but the government don't really want to touch it, and they don't want the press that's associated to it if something goes wrong. And the mentality in prison is unfortunate. It's that when somebody messes something up, they take it away from everyone, which isn't a. And I wrote a piece for the governor in one of the last prisons I was in, and I said the mentality doesn't work at all. I said it's if they create a new incentive or a new opportunity for somebody, and 100 people are doing it, and one person messes up and they do something stupid, they take that off 100 people. I said, and that logic is kind of like, if you apply that to driving offences, one person breaks the speed limit, we take cars off everybody. And that's the kind of mentality that you've got in prison. If one person abuses it, they'll take it off absolutely everybody. And that's backwards, and that's not how we work in normal society. But because they're so concerned of the press that might follow, criminal give an opportunity and does X, Y, and Z, and the press will gobble that up. So it would need to find an answer, to find a solution to the I'd say the embarrassing reoffending rate that we've got in this country. You would need an effort in unison between both government and press to change the entire outlook on not every person with a criminal record is scum of the earth.
But also acknowledging that some people could not be rehabilitated.
Yeah.
Because there are bad apples.
And do we tarnish everybody with the same brush, or do we give people an opportunity because they paid their penance, their crime? They were sentenced for their crime, and their punishment was to be apart from their family and society for so many years and have everything else stripped from them, which you can say that's fine, but that is their punishment done. That's the end. On the flip side of that, we are meant to treat them people as if they are now, to err on the side of caution, but they are human beings, and they've made a mistake and they've had a whole lot of time to think over their mistakes. Do we just then say, no, we're not going to give opportunities to the millions of people in the country who've been to jail? Or do we say it's worth taking a chance and seeing who the ones are who really mess up, just so that we can save the 16, 17, 18 out of the 20 that just want to go back to living a normal life and have an opportunity? Like if you, and as I said before, if you leave prison to absolutely nothing and there's no opportunities, you're just going to go back to prison. And what it would cost us, what it would cost the state to put measures in place to put people in opportunities would be significantly less than it costs us to house that many prisoners all over again by failing them same people. So it would be a cost-effective solution. Yeah, similar to the angle we took on the pandemic of prevention is more efficient and more cost-effective than cure. Locking people up, and it costs on average, I think it's like 40 to 50,000 per prisoner per year to keep them inside. Obviously, that's taken into everything in consideration: staffing, food, energy. That is, to have that much in resources, say only 50% of those people, or even less, are willing to take them opportunities out the other side. Then you're talking 100,000 people at 40, 50 grand a pop. That's significant. You're telling me we can't allocate those resources into a better rehabilitation reform system similar to that, what they do in Denmark and Finland and Sweden, and we'd be saving the country a fortune.
Well, it's like you said before, is essentially if you've spent your whole life, I mean, you probably would have spent a lot of your life in the circles that you were growing up with. If you hadn't had access to parkour, you might not have known a life different. And the only reason that you came back to that is because you'd had exposure to it through getting on a train to Paris at 14. And that's a very bold and unique decision to be making. So if people can have exposure to things that they've never been fortunate enough to have exposure to, and that has put them in a desperate situation where they feel the need to make a choice that has obviously the impacts that we've discussed, logic says to me, if they're not the bad apples, those are people that can be rehabilitated in a certain way, or at the very least given a chance in that controlled environment where an assessment can then be made. But I think you're right. I've always reflected on this as painting everyone with you can't paint 3 people with the same brushstroke, let alone
no chance
100,000 people in one nation, for example. So what you said there as well, from a punishment point of view, is that yours didn't actually end, really. And this is more recent. We don't spend much time on it because I want to focus more on the future and what you've been doing in more recent years. But with the rise in popularity that came from going viral for keeping gyms open and all the positive outcomes that came from that, the Jersey and the Channel Islands that you mentioned earlier, the police department there brought up some historic charges from your past life that then ended up sending you back to the institution in which we've just discussed. And again, don't want to spend too much on it, but I can imagine that given the penance and the development and forward motion that you'd made as an individual, the second time must have hurt a lot more than the first because you didn't see yourself as deserving. Well, I know that you acknowledge your past and therefore what's done is done, but equally you'd made a huge amount of positive impact. You've got people training and operating throughout, that the pride that you felt for that community stand up must have been taken away from you quite aggressively in a moment.
Yeah, it was very disheartening, and it was a fall from grace that I don't think was just at the time. And what had happened there is, obviously, out the back of all the exposure I had through the pandemic, I'd become, through no choice or desire, I'd started to become an advocate for the industry and an advocate for reform. So not just on the health and fitness side of things, but for reform. And my entire journey of everything that we've just discussed, of going from this good guy, a successful person, to taking an alternative path, losing himself, coming back around full swing, then being a pillar of the community. I'd won a ton of awards at this point, out the back of the pandemic side of things, community-based awards. Got nominated for BBC Sports Personality Award. There was a ton of them in it, and there was a lot of press around it then who wanted to cover the whole the rehabilitation story. And I was so for that, because I thought, well, if I can just tell my story and evidence that, look, I might have been making a lot more money when I was doing what I was doing back in the day, and it was easy money. I was miserable, absolutely miserable, paranoid, and I was in a really bad place. And then to come out the other side and apply some of the skills that I'd developed during losing myself and apply them to, modern world business and to be successful. I thought maybe this is a statement for those who have kind of thought, well, I'm stuck on this path now. This is where I've got to go. there's opportunities there if you go hunting for them. Don't get me wrong; they're not served to you on a silver platter by the government, as we just stated. But if you go looking for them, if you are, if you're driven enough, then you can be there and you can turn your life back around again. So I thought there's no harm in me talking to the press. There's no harm in me being open, because most people try and bury this type of stuff. Never happened. Let's just sink it. Never talk about it again. I thought, you know what? No, I'm not ashamed of it because of the process that I went through to get to where I am now, and I think that's valuable. So the wise thing for me to have done. The wise thing for me to have done would have been to just not talk about it and not compromise.
Do you wish you'd done that?
That's a difficult one, and I still don't know the answer to that question. I have no regrets for the COVID situation, for taking a stand there, and that's obviously what's led to what I'm about to explain now. But in terms of talking about it, I'm undecided on that as of yet, because I can't see any actual, other than comments and messages on Instagram, I can't see any direct positive influence that I've had in talking about this, although there are some opportunities coming up this year. It looks like I may have.
Yet, being a key detail.
Exactly, yeah.
We don't know what downstream
So,
holds,
so I don't want to, there are opportunities in the pipeline for later this year, which may be quite significant. So I start doing these press articles. And then one in particular, I have the Jersey Evening Press contact me. Nick, we want to cover your story again. We think it's amazing what you've done. You've turned your life around completely. They read my article in the New York Times. He said, look, you're an inspiration, and we want to be able to show that to the island of Jersey, because there is a strong culture of importing and exporting drugs there, because the commodity there has a high value, because it's an island. I said, you know what, guys, let's do it. So they do this huge piece on me, and it runs across 2 days. So there was a big 2-page spread on a Monday, and it followed with a big 2-page spread on a Tuesday. And this is in print. And on Monday, across the first and second page, it read from free runner to drug runner. And it was the whole first 50% of my story.
Yep.
And then the second day, on the Tuesday, they printed from prison inmate to community hero. And it encapsulated everything beautifully. It was honest. It was accurate. It was fair. It wasn't embellishing at all. It was, these are the facts. This is the journey he's been on. He's been very open with us. This is what he did. Admits to it completely. This is where he is now. This is how we got there. He's successful now. Has X, Y, and Z business. He's worth X amount. And I thought that's really positive, and I was really proud of the piece. But what had actually happened behind the scenes is Jersey police, Jersey Customs at least, had some evidence on me that they'd been sitting on for many years, and they'd done nothing with it because it was a small cannabis charge, which ordinarily in any other situation wouldn't have been pursued. Certainly not to the extent of getting a European arrest warrant or anything like that. So they've sat on this for years and done nothing with it, because why would we? It's not worth anything. No one's going to go to jail over it. I obviously then reach national press, global press. Jersey Evening Post run this article.
Yeah, you're pissing in their front garden a little bit.
I am, yes. Yeah, that's exactly how they see it. Yeah, look at this kid that's come from nothing all over the news, and now he's got X, Y, and Z, and we don't like him. Let's make an example out of him. He's got all this press around him. And Jersey it's a very bizarre island. It's only 9 by 5 miles, population of about 130,000, and they suffer from short man syndrome, because they're so small. They really want to, we want to make ourselves known. So they see me as an opportunity for some cheap press. So they've dug this out the archives, years old. And when I eventually got after my arrest, which come a few months after this article, I get my disclosure pack, which is the evidence bundle that the prosecution has against you. They have to disclose everything. And it was about a week after this article come out that you get the whole timeline of the investigation. So you get all the early stuff when they first found the evidence, and then it goes quiet for years and they do nothing with it. And the article comes out a week later, the investigation's kicked back up, then they apply for an arrest warrant and everything else, and then they come and arrest me. And they come and got me, and when I got my dep, so I just looked through the paperwork, and I was like, this couldn't be any more orchestrated if it tried. Like, they could have at least tried to hide it a little bit. So the press ate me alive, because the information was completely misconstrued. There was no kind of obvious timeline put there. There was no reference to what had happened since, and the press absolutely butchered me, because obviously the last chunk of press I'd had prior to that was everything from the Daily Mail to the New York Times covering this angle of small gym in Liverpool defeats government.
Yeah.
So the whole tone there is anti-establishment, even though that wasn't the case. We were just pro-science. We went anti-government. We went anti-COVID. We were just pro-data, pro-science.
Community hero essentially was the narrative, wasn't it?
It was, yeah, and they didn't like that because they'd had to yield and change legislation. So there was already this kind of feeling of, or at least I was kind of sat waiting, thinking we've got away with this too easy. So they arrest me, and they, it's not worth my energy to go over the entire story again, but it was the most, a kangaroo court is the best way to describe it. And they, for the first time in Jersey history, as we had a conversation before we jumped on, there are a double jeopardy for all intents and purposes. They charged me twice for the same offence, which had never happened in the history of Jersey courts. In the hundreds and hundreds of years that court has been active, it had never happened before. It had never happened since. So they gave me, for the two charges, for one of them, they gave me 3 times the highest sentence that had ever been dished out in Jersey. This is for a cannabis offence. And then they added an additional charge on top, which then took me to about 4, 5, 6 times the sentence that I should have got for this particular crime. They took no consideration for all the work that I'd done since. I had references from candidates for London mayor, top medical people, executives, you name it. You couldn't have had a better mitigation bundle if you tried. And I hired the best lawyer on the island. He cost me an absolute fortune. And he said, Nick, in my entire history, in my entire career, because he prosecutes for the state, so he's one of theirs. And he said, in 30 odd years of doing this job at the top level, he said, I've never seen anything like this. He said his exact words were, you've pissed somebody off high up. He's like, and that's all I can say. I don't know if he was alluding to the fact that he knew something there, but he wasn't very clear. He just said, trust me, you pissed somebody off who's got some influence. So that was a really tough time, and that was a massive fall from grace because I couldn't counter the narrative that the press were pushing, which was taking everything completely out of context, and I was nowhere to be seen. Like I couldn't share my side of the story. I couldn't. Yeah. It wasn't until I got out that I could say, right, look, I'm going to publish my court documents now, and everybody's going to see the truth. But in the meantime, I've had 18 months of being eaten alive by by the national press, by the Trinity Group, especially, which is Mirror PLC now, I think. So you got like the Mirror, the Liverpool Echo. The former Maxwell conglomerate, they're all the same. So once one of them runs with the article, they all do. Yeah. So once you've got misinformation in one entity, they all copy it. Yeah.
Which in a Google search bar can be quite dangerous.
Yeah, and that's caused me so many issues coming back around the other side, and to say it's hamstrung my life would probably be an understatement. It has crippled my progression moving forward, because it as you say, it is a simple Google, and you come up with terms like money laundering with my name attached to it, and I've never been charged with money laundering my entire life. And it wasn't until I got out that I could publish my actual court documents. I was like, look, I've never been charged for this in my entire life. This is complete slander. But if you're a bank, or you're a commercial bank, or you're a commercial lender, or you have a property portfolio and I'm looking to acquire a building to put a gym in there, you just Google my name and straight away you get them words. And that's crippled me so badly. And I originally thought I was on what's called a politically exposed person list, and that's why I was having so many issues. And I've had bank accounts shut down. I've had my insurance cancelled. I have been absolutely crippled.
And the key detail being, this is all since you have been essentially spat out by the justice system, and thus job done. So please reacclimatize yourself with day-to-day life, but institutions out with the ones that essentially have the jurisdiction to be able to pass punishment are punishing you.
Yes, and it all kind of happened quite fast. And we have a direct debit collections company that collects the memberships for our gyms. It's called Go Cardless. And we had multiple bank accounts separate to that. I have my car insurance. So all within the space of 8 days, I have an email from Go Cardless. So they collect about 3,000 direct debits every month for us. They email me and say, due to background and media checks, we're closing all of your accounts from today. Any money taken from customers is going to be refunded. Bearing in mind, to transfer a bulk direct debit mandate, you're looking at 6 weeks. So you've got 3,000 members there paying £40 a pop each. So you're talking 100 grand a month being stripped away from us with no way to replace that. And then So that was on, say, the Monday. On the Wednesday, I get an email from the bank who closed all your accounts immediately, personal and business. Send us the account details of where you'd like your money refunded to. So we lose our direct debit collections company. We lose all of our bank accounts, business and personal. So I have nowhere to put any money whatsoever. I get an email from my car insurance to say that due to my offence, my insurance is going to go up from £1,700 to £13,500 just because I've been to jail. When I queried them on that, I said, well, why is that? I said, oh, well, there'll be some data somewhere to evidence that if you've been to prison, then you're at higher risk of a crash. I was like, okay, well, can you cite the study where that's been evidenced? Well, it's not our policy to hand that out. Okay, of course it's not. But that's it. You've got no say in the matter whatsoever. That's as simple as it is. That happens. Then we have the regional councils at one of the buildings that I just moved into. So this is all in the space of the same week. We'd moved in, really successful new gym launch, contacted by the council to say that we don't have permission to operate there. And I said, well, we do, because it says on your website here, here, and here, that it's the accepted use for what we need. Oh, well, if you look back to 1978, it actually wasn't given the correct class at the time. Therefore, you now need to apply for retrospective planning, which there's no guarantee you're going to get. So that was maybe on the Thursday, and around that same week, this is the industrial estate that we've just gone on to. So when we acquired this building, we've acquired it on the basis of there's X amount of parking there, but there's also a lot of overspill on the roads. Huge industrial estate. It's been there 50, 60 years. Never any parking issues. Within a matter of days of me signing the lease, the entire industrial estate is flooded with double yellow lines. Across entrances everywhere where you wouldn't even ordinarily have double yellow lines, they put them everywhere. I had a conversation with the local mayor. He said, Nick, I've spoken to regional council. Nobody knows how they've ended up there. Nobody has a clue. There's no paper trail. They've clearly been put down in error. However, they've now applied for them to be enforced. So all this string of events is all in the space of a week.
Wasn't this when you got the dumbbell back as well?
Yeah. There we go. So I had imported the equipment from China to the UK in my name because where I forgot to hide. It gets stopped at the border and customs pull it aside. They seize it with the intention of searching it. I get notified and I say, well, okay, search it thoroughly. And they say, oh, we're gonna conduct x-rays and whatever else. I was like, go for it. I don't know what you're expecting to find. I'll put it in my name for a reason. If I was going to import a container full of drugs, you think I'd put it in my name and import it into Liverpool? But I said, look, go for it. Go nuts. Do whatever you need to do. So they keep the containers for 3 weeks. And then I get an email to say that you owe us £25,000 in search fees. And I was like, I'm sorry, what? There must be an error here. Oh, no. So we're charging you for 3 weeks worth of storage while we searched it. We're charging you for the x-rays. We're charging you for the manpower to search. We're charging you for the forklift that we use to take the boxes out to search. So we now want £25,000 off you. Or if you don't pay, for every day you don't pay, it's an extra £600 per day. And if it gets to a certain amount, we'll auction off your equipment and you'll still owe us the money. So you tell me how that works. If the police come and raid your house on poor information and they smash the place to pieces, because as you've seen on my Instagram, they sawn one of my dumbbells in half.
And it is sawn.
It is literally sawn.
It is. That's not an angry dramatization. There is no way that could have been cut other than with a saw.
Yeah, so they've sawn it in half. They boil washed it in acid first to take the rubber off it. Then they've sawn it in half. They've x-rayed everything else. They damaged all sorts. They've ripped it to pieces. Then couldn't fit it back in the containers in the first place. So then we had to pay extra on top of the 25 grand to have it collected on a curtain side wagon because they couldn't get the boxes back into the container they took it out of. And that was our bill again. So we're up to about 26 grand now. So we had to pay that. We had no choice. Otherwise, they'd have auctioned the equipment off and that would have been the end of it. So they charged me £26,000. And as I was just saying, if the police break into your house and they smash all your cutlery and they destroy your house on false information or poor information at least, and then a week later they send you a bill for the privilege, in what world?
It highly exerted our officers chucking that baton around.
In what world do you get billed for authorities' mistakes? So there was that, and then... So that was on the Ellesmere Port site. And then the landlord for the Ellesmere Port site, this was another issue. So the building that we were going into for that, we'd spent 5 months in negotiations. We were happy. The landlord was happy. The agent was happy. We agreed to meet on site to sign the paperwork, to get the keys. I had all my tradesmen there ready outside, ready to go in and assess the build and see what the plan was going to be. Everybody was super excited. The meeting was 1:00. Gets outside the building at 1 o'clock. Nobody there. So we're stood in the rain. Gets to 1:15. I thought, I'll ring the agent now. Rings, nothing. I thought, gets to 1:30 now. I don't want to harass him. I don't want to look like I'm a pest, so I'll wait. Wait another 10 minutes. I was like, no, this isn't right. Rings. An hour goes by. Still in the rain. All sat in our cars outside waiting to get in. Hour and a half goes by, 2 hours maybe, gets an email. Hi, Nick. Regret to inform you that the freeholder, the bank that provides the mortgage for the freeholder, who then gives the lease to the property owner, who's then going to give the lease to you, has decided they don't want to do business with somebody like you. That is the end of it. There'll be no further negotiations. We apologize for wasting your time. That is it. And what had happened was, and this again goes back to the financial institution completely icing me out, is that we as the tenant, we deal with the agent. The agent deals with the solicitor and the landlord. The landlord has to deal with the freeholder who owns the land. The freeholder has to deal with the bank who provides the mortgage to buy the land in the first place. Everybody up this chain was happy. It got to the bank that provides the mortgage to the freeholder, and they've gone, oh, not this guy. So we'd spent 5 months negotiating. Everybody was happy, and then the bank have gone, not a chance.
It's amazing it even got there. I can't imagine that information ever really filtered up as far as that level of...
Yeah. So, you know, we have multiple issues there. The direct debit collections company shutting us down, which had I not kicked up a fuss on social media, they'd have stuck to that, and we'd have been screwed. Absolutely screwed, because we'd have had no money for 2-3 months. So you're talking $250,000 plus out.
Jobs, communities.
Yeah. You've got wages to pay. You've got landlords to pay. You've got everything. They're not going to. They don't care that you've had a direct debit collections company stop. But even when we solved the direct debit mandate issue, we then had no bank account to put the money in. So I've had to strip myself off my companies, put friends up as facades, as owners of the business, just so we can get a bank account, just so we can get some money back in to pay the wages for everybody else. And it got to the point where, as I say, I thought I'd been placed on a politically exposed person list from the COVID situation. And I had a brief conversation with, I forget the lady's name. She is assistant to Nigel Farage. And he's gone through similar issues. Obviously, for very different reasons. And she said, look, NF's gone through the exact same situation. Do you want to have a phone call with him? Let's see what you can sort out for you, X, Y, and Z. So I was due to have a conversation with Farage, and then my business partner was like, look, Nick, because this was due to be on GB News. My business partner was like, no, Nick, I don't want to be associated with Farage. I'm like, look, it's not about political views. It's about he's been shut down by the banks for his political views. I said, and he's found a solution. I think Lloyd's TSB in the end gave him an account. I said, if I can find a solution to our situation, it's not political alignment. It's just trying to find a solution to what's going on here. Anyway, long story short, his team prior to us going on had done some digging, and I'm not on a PEP list. So that was enough for me to say, well, there's probably no reason for me to have this conversation. And if it's going to upset my business partner, then all right, let's not do it. So it didn't end up going through with the appearance in the end. But it turns out I'm not on a PEP list. I'm not on any money laundering list, anything even close to that. It is quite literally just because of Google, as far as I can tell. Unless somebody's pulling the strings higher up. But in terms of any lists or any blacklist, any black spots, none of it exists. So it's one of two things. It's either just Google or there's somebody still pulling strings. And I, as much as I'd like to fall subject to delusions of grandeur and think, the top men in the government are all trying to stop me making a little bit of money, I think chances are it is just a Google issue. But that's something that I'm going to battle with now for the rest of my life, because to sink the magnitude of press that I've covered that, because I've come out the back of the pandemic where I've had probably every single notable press entity in the world cover me, to then get arrested, and then they've all done follow-up stories on my arrest. It's going to be very difficult for me to even sink any of that. And obviously, we had a conversation earlier today about PR agencies, and I've spoke to someone, and they said, look, Nick, your situation is very unique in that it's going to cost you an absolute fortune to bury all of this. And then say somebody just does a follow-up article, you start the whole thing all over again. So I could spend 70, 80, 90 grand trying to bury these articles. All it would take is for one of them to do an update, and then I'm straight back in the same situation again. So I'm in a situation now where I probably won't ever be able to own my own companies or, push in a positive direction myself. It has become impossible for me to rehabilitate by following the actual structure of the system. I'm having to live in the gray area now where I'm doing things that are bending the rules and aren't quite so, don't get me wrong, I'm not breaking the law, but I'm having to bend the rules just to be able to live a clean life.
Yeah, find alternative solutions.
Which is backwards. I'm trying to do the right thing, but you're making me do the wrong things so I can still do the right things. And it's it's a very, it certainly does dampen the last bit of faith I had left in the system of functioning to any, efficient extent of, well, hang on, I've done everything you've asked of me. Everything you would ask of somebody who's been to prison, who's made mistakes in their life, who's committed crime, everything that you ask of that person in that moment of court or in that moment of release, you should be a better person. You should put, good energy out into the world. You should reform. You should want to do better. You should live a clean life. You should help other people live a clean life. Everything that they've asked of me, I've done, and I've done it tenfold. And still, I can't so much as get a bank account, car insurance, a mortgage. Can't get any of it whatsoever. So I am completely locked out of the system, which, were it not for me having some really great friends and having a really great network around me, what could I do? What could I possibly do? If I didn't have finances behind me and I didn't have my social media influence behind me, I'd have no choice but to go back to what I was doing, because I couldn't possibly get a job anywhere else. I'm far too high profile. You're going to Google me and you're not going to touch me. So I can't get a job. I can't get a bank account. I can't get a house. I couldn't get anything whatsoever in my name. So if I have to buy something now, I've got to buy it outright. I want a car, I've got to buy it outright. I want a house, I've got to buy it outright. No lender will touch me. No underwriter will touch me. But a simple fact, you Google me and there it is. So I know my situation is somewhat unique given my profile. But in terms of the system functioning properly and there being any degree of to take the concept of rehabilitation serious in this country, I am found wanting. So where I go from here, it's been, and it sounds quite doom and gloom, but I'm in a really good space at the minute.
I was going to say, can you find happiness amongst this chaos, or have you accepted the chaos is the chaos, and therefore you can reframe
and
your life in a new perspective? As in you're operating in a different pitch now. You're not kicking the ball on the same pitch as everyone else, but you can be happy kicking your ball on this pitch over here.
Yeah, and it comes in waves, and this is something that I've not really spoke about publicly, but it nearly killed me in December. And December was around the time when all this happened all at once.
The 8-day period.
Yeah, everything all at once. And that is, I'd say, the first time in my entire life that I've ever considered suicide. It's the first time in my entire life, despite everything I've been through, despite the sexual abuse, despite the double stints in prison, despite the neglect as a child from my family. December was the first time in my entire life that I'd have ever put genuine thought into taking my own life, to the extent where I'd written a letter, I'd hit an absolute rock bottom. My friends hadn't heard from me from 5 or 6 days. I had my phone turned off completely. I was like, I just can't do this anymore. And it very nearly got me. And I feared if there had been one slight gust of wind or one additional bit of turbulence for that house of cards, I think it would have got me. And if it wasn't for the network that I have around me that pulled me out of that hole, I don't think I'd be here having this conversation with you today. And it's quite ironic that was probably the lowest I've ever been in my life, because it was kind of like, look, I've done everything right. What more do you people want from me? I have done absolutely everything that you've asked of me. I've been the best version of myself. I've tried to help as many people as I possibly could. I have done everything that you have asked of me. What more do you possibly want from me? The network around me pulled me out of that hole. And within 7 or 8 days of being forced to spend time around the people that I love again, everything kind of looked up again, and out of nowhere there was solutions to every problem. And then within another week, maybe not even that long, I found myself in probably the happiest situation I'd been in for 10 years. And to go from the absolute rock bottom to feel like you are one episode, one bit of drama away from not even existing anymore, to I am so grateful for everything I have and everyone that I have around me. And that was such a bizarre feeling, to go from absolute rock bottom to the absolute top in such a short space of time. And I think that's in no way testament to my willpower. That is solely due to the people that I've got around me and the very close support network that I've got, that they took me from the absolute bottom. And, you know, in the space of a fortnight, I was on top of the world again. And that was December. And for January and February up to where we are today, which is near the end of February, I have been in the most content, loving, happy, successful space I've been in my entire life. And this is the first time that I've felt on par with how I felt when I left the parkour community in 2009. This is the first time that I've felt that level of happiness and that level of love and contentment and community. Like I have it back for the first time in you know, near 15 years. I have it again for the first time, and that is just 6-7 weeks after being at the absolute, you know, the depths of misery into the happiest I've been for nearly 15 years. So that's, you know, I'm really grateful for where I am today. And we've had huge success in business over the last few months. I mean, even in December when we hit rock bottom, I was at the peak of my success by an absolute mile. Like we are absolutely killing it in every avenue. But it's hard to see the glass is half full when you just keep getting hit and hit and hit and hit. And no matter how much good you do, you are hit and hit and hit again. But it's, you know, aside from that momentary collapse that I had, you know, I'm on top of the world, and I am grateful for everything that I've got. And there's not a day that goes by where I don't kind of stop and go, it's been a long journey, but look at everything that we've got. And I've seen firsthand through traveling out the world, you know, traveling all around the world, for seeing some of the most deprived parts of Asia, and having spent 4.5 years in prison and seen people who really have absolutely nothing. You know, it's not wasted on me how fortunate I am for everything that I do have. And my entire drive and purpose now is just to try and bring the people that I've got around me onto the same level that I've got, and just kind of have that same life again that I had as a kid. And I refer to it to my own self, at least, as trying to get to Neverland. That's what I've been trying to do for the last 15 years, is trying to get back to Neverland, and, you know, and just have that sense of life and adventure again with people that I really care about and people that really care about me. And if that's, as I say, I'm very grateful and very fortunate for what I have. And I could have retired 2 years ago now. And I live quite modestly. I do have some nice things, but for the most part, I would be just as happy, as I say, in my £2 Primark joggers and my stolen trainers. Like, and I stand true to what I said. I'd give up all the success and wealth that I have now to go back to that chapter. I really would. But my focus now is to just try and get my friends and my family in the same position that I am now, help them attain the same level of financial freedom that I have, which allows them to live more. And that's not because I think money is in any way, you know, the key to happiness. Buying things is certainly not going to achieve happiness, certainly not sustainable happiness, but having financial freedom that gives you your time back, I think, is the most valuable thing.
Space to reflect on what is
like,
truly important to you as well, I'd imagine.
Nothing that you can buy is ever going to give you long-term happiness. You can buy your Ferrari, you can buy your Lamborghini, you can buy your fancy house, but nothing is going to give you the same level of value of being able to afford to not have to work 40 hours a week in a job you dislike. You cannot put a price on that. And that is what I want for those around me, is for them to have the option to work or not work. No, the purpose of it isn't to give them the opportunity to go and buy fancy cars or fancy holidays. It's to give them a degree of passive income where they don't have to work if they don't want to. If you're working 50, 60, 70 hours a week and you don't get time to spend with, you don't get time to share with your family or your children, and before you know it, you're 70 years of age, you finally hit retirement, you're dead in 5 years, that's the end. And that to me is heartbreaking, to think that is the process that most people go through, and they don't really get a real opportunity to live life. And I had that opportunity quite early with parkour, with the financial freedom that we had there, and it is beautiful. There is nothing like it. To not have to care about money and to just have, and it sounds like it's got a degree of cheesiness to it, but there really is nothing like it whatsoever. When you have no obligation to go to your 9 to 5 every single day, and you can just say, well, let's just take 2 weeks off and let's just go to the other side of the world together. Let's just go and explore. Let's go and experience. Let's just go and live together, rather than just waiting for Saturday when we're absolutely exhausted from the job that most people do hate. And that's the reality of the situation. I mean, you and I are lucky enough that we enjoy what we do, but most people do not. And to be able to take them out of that environment and put them into a space where they can choose what they do with their time. And if they choose to work, which some people do, I do, but I have the option to choose not to. And if I want to go on a 6-month sabbatical and just disappear, I can do exactly that. And that's what I want for the people around me. And that's the driving factor for me now, is to get everybody back to that level where we were in the parkour community, because we were young then and we didn't really have the obligations that we do now. There wasn't mortgages to pay for. And some of my friends have children and they have wives and husbands. And it's not the same dynamic where we could just live like hobos. We could just put our £2 pants up. We can't do that again. It's not realistic at our age now. So I have to, in order for us to have that same kind of lifestyle again, we have to create an environment where there isn't a dependence on going to work to create the finances to have that small amount of time. So right now it's just about creating passive income for those that I care about, to enable them to live the life that they want to live, rather than living the life that they have to live. So that's my focus at the moment. And as I say, I'm in a really fortunate place that I am extremely grateful for. And I don't forget it for a second. But my push now, up until the point where I can leave the country, is just to set the framework in place to, bring that to my friends and family, as not just because that's something that I want in the selfless sense of I want people to be able to spend time with me when I go gallivanting around the world, but also for the fact that they are fundamental in me being in the position that I'm in today. And I've had a lot of emotional support, but I've also had a lot of business support, free help from friends when we've done, some of these big gym fit outs. And it's been, because I can't get funding and I can't get finance and I can't get loans, everything that we've achieved, I've had to self-fund. And that has stretched me thinner and thinner and thinner every time. And we've had some good news on that front, but it stretched me thinner every time, to the point where friends have helped me and they've turned up by the dozen to come and work for free to help me achieve what I have today. And I would not have what I have today were it not for them. I really would not. And that's not just something I pulled out of a cheap quote book. I really wouldn't be where I am without them. I couldn't physically have done it, and I couldn't emotionally have done what I've done without them. So as far as I'm concerned, they all own part of what I have, and I feel morally obligated to return that to them. And that's the way that the world should work. And exactly what we said earlier, a community for the people that help you get to where you are, for you to forget them and just worry about the next step and the new circles that you're in. I'd be no better than I was when I lost myself in 2014. So I'm now in a position where I'll never have to work again if I don't want to. And it is those people that are around me and those who've supported me and stayed loyal to me the reason why I'm here. So it's now I now have a moral obligation to make sure that they're in a similar situation to me now that I find myself with the means to do so. So that's my focus for now.
I'm going to assume that not a single one of those people are from that 2-year period.
No, not at all. And it's again, that's testament to how long many of them have stood by me and seen me go through, the cycle of life. And they've stuck by me with no promise of return. There's never been a conversation up until recently where it's, if you do X for me, I'll do Y for you long term. That's never been discussed. And it's similar to what I said about the parkour world, where everyone just kind of assumes we're all in it together and there's no kind of measure of benefit. There's no kind of keeping tally on who looked out last. There's none of that. And that's fortunately the environment that I've managed to find myself in again. And I think I think I've done well in recreating what we had in them early days. And it's not a difficult dynamic. It's not an easy dynamic to create with grown adults, trying to get them to adjust from what is the societal norm of you focus on you, where you're going, your bonus, your next promotion. It's hard to kind of pull people away from that societal norm and put them into well, hang on. If we all work together, if we all work individual, then we'll go up 1 level each per year. We all work together, then we can go up 3 levels per year. And if we stick together and we're loyal to each other, we can just go and we can go and we can go and we can go. And the only way that we, the way that most people don't really find much success in life is because they go at it alone. And that is what society has bred people to do, is go at it alone. You focus on you focus on your lane. Whereas our power as human beings always has been working together. And historically, that is exactly how we've developed as a species, and how we've ended up as advanced as we are, is that we work together to get where we are. And it's bizarre that we reached the point of, societal advancement where we are now, where we've kind of forget what brought us here in the first place, and now we've gone to focus on the individual, when if it wasn't for the fact that we all worked together and we worked in communities and we worked in tribes, that's what got us here in the first place. And now that we found all the success, we've just kind of left them values behind, or at least we've been bred to forget them values, because it's the system needs cogs.
Do you feel that you're trying to make up for time and experiences with love and people around you that were supportive of you and everything that you did, that you maybe didn't have growing up?
Yeah, and that's certainly what my psychiatrist thinks anyway. But yeah, definitely, there was a void in my life growing up, and I always think it important to note that that's not something that I hold against my mother, because she was so much younger than me, and she did better than I ever would have done in that circumstance, a million times better than I ever would have done. But fact remains, she was 15 years older than me, had no life experience, did not have the level of maturity that you would need to bring up a kid, and she was a single parent, and I don't hold that against her whatsoever, because I am 100% convinced she did better than I ever would have done in that situation. But that doesn't change the fact that I spent most of my life, up until my early teenage years, without any real love, without any attention. My mum was very rarely there. She worked a lot, and when she wasn't in work, she was asleep. So I spent a lot of my time just roaming the streets on my own, climbing trees, got in with a much older crowd. And that's something that I've never really had. And, when I've got friends who've invited me around to their homes at Christmas time, and partners that I've had, and they have these big family networks, and everyone's really happy to see each other, and there's this big, the positive environment like that. That breaks my heart all the time, because I've never ever had that. Like, Christmas was never a thing, birthdays were never a thing. Like, I've never really had that. We didn't have Christmas dinner. Like, I'd get it at my nan's once every few years, but in terms of my mum wouldn't get up till 4 or 5 p.m. on Christmas Day, and that's just kind of like what do you want, microwave meal. So I never had any of them traditional family values, or that network, or that I was never bathed in love, and that's probably why I've grown up quite black and white in my thought process. There isn't a whole lot of, up until the parkour side of things, at least, a lot of my thinking is very, very polarized, and there's never really been room for a whole lot of emotion. I've had to learn that as an adult, rather than having that as like an innate thing as a child. So I'd say where I am now, there is definitely an element of me trying to make up for the love and time that was lost in the past, and make up for the childhood that I didn't have. That's probably why I'm stuck in this Peter Pan Neverland mentality, because I never really had the early childhood that I wanted. Don't get me wrong, from my mid-teens onwards, for the parkour community side of things, I had it. But I'd missed out on 13, 14 years before that, which is, the norm.
And you lost it through poor decision-making, I guess you'd probably call it.
Yeah.
And I guess fear must drive you to go as far in the other direction as you possibly can.
Definitely, yeah. And I carry that burden still to this day, and I will probably always carry it for the people that I hurt during that time.
Are you at peace with the past?
I don't know if I'll ever be. It's difficult, because it's such a driving factor in my life to go the complete opposite way. It's very difficult to close that chapter, because it's that chapter that's fueling me to go this way. So I think I'm at peace with it, in the sense of I have very few regrets. And I can say that now because I'm in a very special place. And had I taken out any one of those events, I might not be here today. In this capacity, with this much to be grateful for, with so many people around me that I have that are very, very rare individuals. And I've been burnt a lot in my life. And it's taken me, I give a lot to people, and I'm overly trusting, I'm overly honest, and I I share everything that I have more than I should do. And I know that, but it's the way that I like to be. I will give people 100% from straight away, and I will give you the opportunity to bear me. And if you do, then that's us done. But it's for every 9 people that burn me, and it's happened a lot, quite seriously. For every 9 people that have taken advantage of me and burnt me, I find one really rare individual, which for most people, they'll get burnt by 3, 4, 5 people and go, I'm never trusting anyone again. I'm not doing this again. They'll close themselves off. But in my experience, getting burnt by them 7, 8, 9 people first to find that 10th person, they are worth getting burnt 100 times over. And now I find myself surrounded by 20 odd people. And it's taken me hundreds of burns to find these 20 people. And the strength that we have as a network, as an emotional network and as a business network, is completely unstoppable. And it's worth me being burnt them 100 times over to find these people. And that's the same advice that I give to everyone else. You get quite upset when they get let down by somebody. And I'm just like, look, it's part of the process. This is what you have to go through to find good people. And you can't say, I'm never going to associate with bad people again, because it's not until you give them the opportunity to burn you that you find out who they really are. So you can't just go out and look for good people. It's not quite that simple. You'll find people masquerading as good people who turn out not to be. And I've had a few of those as well, and that's taken a decade to find out who the true colors of them individuals. But you should never give up hope just because somebody let you down or the next person does. The fact that you've put yourself in a situation to be vulnerable like that and should do again is what will inevitably lead to you finding the good people of the world. And it's taken me 15 years to create a circle that is similar to the one that I had in my teens. And there's been a lot of hurt there, but I wouldn't take any of that back. And I'm at peace with the pain that I've gone through, the people have put me through. I'm not so much at peace with the pain that I put other people through, but the journey as a whole has led me to here, and I am very, very, very fortunate to have the people that I have around me. And if I was to change any one of them factors over the last 33 years, I might not have them people around me. I might not be in the position I'm in today. I might not have the health that I have today. So I think it would be naive of me to say that I regret X, Y, and Z. I'd say I'm close to finding peace with the past. There's elements of it that I still feel like there's a degree of penance I have left to pay, and I'm doing my very best to pay that. Whether that ever goes entirely, I don't know. It's hard to say, but on the flip side of that, should it ever go? Because if it's continued to motivate me to be the best version of myself today, then maybe that's something that I need to be careful not to give too much peace to.
It's fueling the ship to never land.
Exactly, yeah. So maybe it's important that I keep that reminder.
Maybe it is, yeah. I guess nobody will ever have the answer. You might never have the answer, but maybe that's the beauty of it, is the reflection along the way. I think before we just move on to practical, what is Bodytech's next couple of months looking like, and what is the really exciting points there? Thank you for the honesty around all the challenges. I think, obviously, having been suicidal myself in the past, the gratefulness that I have for the people in my life that I love and care for, and the lens through which I look at my own decision-making and what's actually valuable to me is better off for it. And it seems like a twisted, morbid thing to say, because you don't want to say, I'm happy that I went through a negative experience like that mentally. And obviously ours were born out of very, very different circumstances. But I think being forced to reflect on the internal workings of why you found yourself in that position in the first place and how you then moved past it, the downstream benefits of that are very valuable to go on that search for fulfillment. So very excited that December didn't go in the direction that you were fearful it would at one point. And
me too.
Yeah. Having the letter, I can guess, will be something. Have you still got it? Have you held on to it? No, it's gone. Because I never wrote one, which I think is something that scares the shit out of me. I felt that despondent with the world that I didn't even
need to leave a message for anybody.
Yeah. But thank you for sharing, because it's clear that you've got an amazing support network around you. And I think the excitement and the forward motion is palpable in everything going on. Which leads me to ask, what's everything going on? Things are opening soon, and then there's a big. I don't know if you're allowed to say the big.
Not the details, not the nitty gritty, because we're due to sign probably next week. But providing everything follows the course that's been set, which it looks, I don't see any reason why it wouldn't at this point. We have acquired funding for the next 25 Bodytech sites, which are going to cost me absolutely nothing, which is a relief for me because, as I say, I've spread myself so thin, going from opening a site 3 months later, doing the next, and these are considerable builds. These are 20,000 odd square foot buildings, kitted wall to wall. So this is, it stretched me and it stretched me and it stretched me, and we were kind of at the point where if I was to do the next site, which is Wrexham, on my own, we run the risk of, if there is a big unexpected bill, it would cause serious problems. Because I am, and as I've said before, and I always want to keep making sure I reiterate this point, I am very grateful for what I have, and I am considerably wealthy now, but everything that I have liquid, I've dumped into assets just to build and build and build and build and build. And if I sold it all up now, as I say, I could walk away and never work another day in my life. However, the ambition is obviously to take my people with me. So it's been double down, double down, double down, double down. And we're fortunate that we found this angel investor when we did, who's come along and said, look, for a percentage of the business, I'm happy to fund. I back what you do entirely. I think what it is that you're trying to do is really special, because I had a conversation with him and I said, look, moving forward, this is how it needs to be. I said, if you're happy with this, we'll proceed. I said, but you take X percent, I take X percent. I said, but X percent remains to be split between my group, and they don't put money in for that. So they will get, my closest group will get X amount of percentage per site moving forward. And that's how it has to be. There's no other variation of this deal that I can allow, because that I need to stand true to that. And if that means I have to stop now and let my funds rebuild for another 6 months and then go, that's exactly what I'll do, because I'm not going to compromise this, this belief that I've got, and this moral obligation that I've got to help those who have helped me get to where I am now, to the next stage. So thinking that was a little bit of a gamble, and he may have took that as, this sounds a bit wild. He said, I think what you're doing is beautiful. He's like, I back you all the way, and it looks like we're going to proceed in that fashion, and it looks like every single person that's stuck beside me and that's helped me get to exactly where I am today is going to be in a really comfortable position over the next couple of years. And that for me is the I made it moments. It's not, I don't take a whole lot of satisfaction in where I am now. Like, buying myself things doesn't really give me any kind of satisfaction. I don't, I've been there and done all that a long time ago, and there's not much in it for me. So for me to double, triple, quadruple my wealth, there's no yes for me. Like, there's no number where I'd get excited. It's just, my life's not going to change. You could 10x my net worth today, and nothing in my life would change. Whereas to say that in 2 years' time, all of those closest to me, the 18, 19, 20 people closest to me, are going to be on the same level that I'm on today. That is the we made it moment for me. So that has come at just the right time. I took my whole group out to the Lake District a couple of weeks ago, with the intention of building the entire business plan and the entire pack whilst we were out there. So there was nearly 20 of us up in the Lake District. We hired a castle for our strategy, for our battle plan. We hired a castle in the north, and we all got together. And I said, look, everyone needs to split into teams. You decide what your strengths are. I said, we want to take, because we've took every single costing from every build that we've done, down to the last screw and nail, down to the last minute of labor, every process, everything has been documented and itemized. So I said, look, we need everything down to the last penny of cost, the process, who does it, how it's applied, where we can find the best bargains. And the reason Bodytech's become as successful as it has is because I've spent the last few years trying to cut out all the middlemen. And I've successfully done that to the point where every product that we buy, every service that we get is straight to supplier. So I now have the exclusivity contract with the factory in China that manufactures our equipment. All of the stuff that we have in-house, everything down to signage, access systems, we have it at bare bones cost. So we're opening these gyms at a fraction of what it would cost a corporate. So corporates are paying like a pure gym or a JD or even a similar size independent is paying quite literally 3-4 times what we're paying per site, just because we've got everything down to the last penny. I was like, but we need to evidence this rather than just winging it, because it's only ever been my money and I trust everybody around me. So it's kind of just been we'll just see how it goes. We'll just play it by ear. We'll wing the life out of it, which is very much me style. was like, but we can't go to an investor with, oh yeah, Nick knows what he's doing. I was like, we need a plan.
Yeah.
So we got everything packed out, the entire business plan, everything itemized in terms of cost, the phases of the build, you know, the brand ethos, the mission statements. We got everything, and we worked through the night. We were there for 2 days. We worked through the night, and we got everything together and all compiled it together into this huge pack, which we haven't even needed most of it because the individual that's come on board, which presumably will be announced in the next couple of weeks, he has complete faith in what we're doing. And that was to have that conversation about what I needed to happen with the share structure, and that's what made me really nervous. I thought, this guy is very interested, and it looks like we're going to get it over the line, but I'm yet to mention what I need to happen here. And that could have been no, that doesn't make good business sense to me.
Pull the pin on the grenade and run away.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, and the structure that we put together is the lads will be given shares from the business. Those who can't afford to contribute to anything, the lads and girls around me will be given shares of the business, and they won't be expected to pay it back through any other means than the dividends that come through the company at absolute cost price. So I've got probably 20 closest friends, and I'd say 15 of them don't really have the finances to do anything like that. And that'll be a case of, right, okay, well, here's your 10%. Here's exactly what it costs, because you have the entire itemized list. You know what it's cost to create 10% of the business. You just give us that. You just put that back into the business over the space of so many years off the dividends that you get, so it never costs you a penny at all. And then obviously by the end of the next 2 years, there'll be enough passive income in there for every single person in my network to not need to work at all. And that to me is we've done it. We've actually done it.
It's mapped out.
This
must be very exciting.
This is the moment. Yeah, we've got there is, and touch wood, there's not really any way you can go wrong, because the business model is very watertight and the overheads are very low compared to what everyone else is putting in. So if we just follow this path, which is literally just walking a straight path in a straight line, we shouldn't fuck it up. So, and that's exciting for everyone involved, it's
exciting for the members in lots of different locations that are going to get access to brilliant gyms in places that probably wouldn't normally get access as well. And I think is the point that we maybe haven't underlined enough, that a solution is being created in places that don't necessarily have that solution, and that will have a massively positive impact on people's lives. Because if we circle right back to how this conversation began, that's where your passion and steadfastness against authority really showed up.
Yeah, and we want to make a difference, and we really do. And we are
the people's gym.
We are the people's gym, and that is plastered absolutely everywhere. And again, that to go back to that New York Times article, that's how they referred to BodyTech, as the people's gym. And that was like, okay, most prestigious newspaper in the world has covered our nickname in there. That's really significant. But we need to stay true to that now as we move forward. And we obviously take a different approach to what the corporates do in the industry, in the sense of a lot of the big boys, for example, they charge PT rent, which for a studio, and it's important that I mention this, for a studio that focuses on personal training or one-to-ones, that is entirely just. For somebody the size of Pure Gym, JD, Total Fitness, who are making hundreds of millions, they do not need to be charging PTs £700 a month for the privilege of using their facility to coach from. And that's something I've never agreed with whatsoever. So we don't charge our PTs anything whatsoever. So long as because how I see it is, if you're a personal trainer and you pay your membership, and you're PTing your friend or your client and he pays his membership, you both already paid for the use of that facility. So all it is, if I charge you now, is a tax.
Yeah.
For no good reason. You are working self-employed, trying to make ends meet, trying to find clients, and I'm going to come over to you and say, hang on, I know you've paid your membership, and I know he's paid his membership, but I want another £700 a month off you, because you're going, one more, you can do it. So because you're trying to help this individual who pays me a membership, because you're trying to help this individual progress in their fitness, their ambitions to become healthier, to become in better shape, whatever it is, to add longevity to their life, because you're trying to do this person a service that's going to benefit their health, that's going to benefit their membership retention, which benefits me, £700 a month, please. So that's something that I've never been able to understand in this industry at all, is that tax. And as I say, I get it for the smaller studios, because you're paying for a smaller niche market where you have one-to-one. Because obviously there are some disgruntled gym owners, my friends as well, who disagree with me entirely on this point. And I said, once you reach a certain size Once you're into the 1,000 members plus, you don't need to be charging PTs. You just don't. You're making enough money that anything beyond that is greed. And if you're taking, and it's hard enough in this country, in this climate, to become a homeowner as it is, if you're taking the equivalent of somebody's mortgage off them per month, you're potentially the reason you're stopping that person progressing in life and being able to get themselves on a property ladder, get themselves in a comfortable position, whilst you're taking home millions in profit. I can't see how anybody justifies that when we're meant to be in part of an industry that wants people to do better, we want people to be healthier, we want people to progress. But if you can just add a tax on somebody for tax sake, similar to VAT that we have in the country now, it is just a tax for tax sake. There's no purpose to it whatsoever. It is just tax for tax sake. And I couldn't live with myself having the People's Gym written on the wall and then try and extort personal trainers who are just trying to do a good service. And it is hard to be self-employed. And no matter what you see on the internet, people sitting on the fancy beaches with their laptops, it is hard to be a self-employed coach. And only a very few of them do really well. And there is plenty that pretend that they do well, that they do not. It is a hard industry to break. And I want to give those same individuals a chance to have something that they wouldn't ordinarily have at the corporates. I want you to have that extra £700 a month. I want you to go and get yourself on the property ladder. I want you to progress. I am grateful to you as a personal trainer for creating an environment and for creating, a significantly higher rate of membership retention by making this person's progress better than it would be on their own. Like, I am grateful to you rather than the reverse that the corporates have of, you should be grateful for me for having the privilege of using this space. You pay your membership. Like, what more do you want? What more do you want? So, it's just little things like that. And like the stuff we done at Christmas Day at Winsford, like that went really, really well. And we wanted to make a statement there that.
And if you can max that out by 25 sites and grow and grow and grow, the impact that you can have on the community
is huge.
Tell you who'd be very proud, and probably is very proud, over in Scandinavia.
Oh, Danny.
It all makes sense. It all makes sense. But I think that community piece all really, that's my perspective on the way you have approached things has always been born out of that community narrative and dying on that hill.
I will die on that hill.
In 2020, and with everything that's happened since, for the next iteration to very much have that thread of DNA running through it and the mission statement for you as an individual and for the businesses being at the core, it really makes me think very deeply on a lot of things that we've spoken about today in terms of rehabilitation, in terms of upbringing, in terms of the privilege that I've had to be able to grow up in a 2-parent household and be able to be happy the whole way through and all these things. And I think it's important to think about and have discussions on these things. Otherwise, we can be conditioned to think one way. And that is where society starts to fall apart, in my opinion, as I'm sure you'll viciously agree on the last point. Well,
1,000,000% agree.
Thoroughly enjoyed that, Nick. Thanks for all the detail. Thanks for such honesty as well. I really do appreciate it. And it's something that I'm sure everybody listening and myself very grateful that everything is in a good place, that you're content and happy, and that you've gone through so many iterations of this battle to the point where you get to review your business plans in a castle in the north.
Thanks again. Thank you for giving me the space. I appreciate it.